Hey, hey, hey. Well, I don't know if that intro makes you feel liminal. That's about exactly how I feel right now. It is trippy and liminal. I don't want to hear these. I don't want to hear my own voice. How's everybody doing? See, we're already talking about the OA. This is great. Please, can we get a new one? New OA. Yeah, I want to rewatch it. I've rewatched it twice, but I feel like every time you probably get something new. I do hear though the new one. I think they are gonna release. I think they made a new one. I don't know if you can hear. Is my mic loud enough? It's raining here. I opened the window so I could listen to the rain. It's freaking magical rain right now. How's everybody else feeling? Anybody else liminal? Has anyone ever stared at their partner or anyone and seen all different faces like this video? And X and I used to do it. It was so intense and weird. Like I was seeing all the parallels. That's cool. I don't know if I've done it. I think I have done it with a partner. I didn't have it get trippy with the partner, but I've had it get trippy with myself in the mirror, which is like this video kind of idea. Like different aspects of yourself come up when you stare at the mirror long enough. One, not altered if you do it long enough, and then two, altered, it's even crazier. But that's been really cool to see. Like I've seen myself as like an old, weird person. Not that old is weird, but I was just remembering that, and I was like, yeah. Very trippy vibes up in here. Sense8. I have not watched Sense8. I've heard of that, but this whole week has felt hella liminal. Yeah. I think it's the eclipse portal, right? Or whatever. We're like in between eclipses. It's been really, interesting for me because I've been trying to kind of I'm trying to get back into just making art, not just music, but trying to do like visual stuff. Like this intro I edited, but it's like a bunch of remixed footage from other things. But I'm wanting to kind of like scratch that itch. When I was a kid, I made creative visuals all the time, but it's been so hard because of the liminality. I mean, it's been tension for me is always good, so it's helpful, but it's also like frustratingly liminal. And I think as I looked into it more, I think it's just really astrology is mostly affecting that right now. But interesting time because I think we're all having to like let go of things in some senses, certain versions of ourselves or habits or ways of doing things. And for some that might be obvious, and for some it's like, ooh, it's kind of tricky. What is it that I'm still, carrying that I need to let go of? Is what we're probably all asking ourselves. I know I have been. Which is sometimes a fun space to make art, to be honest. AO and Glow were travesty to end. I don't know if I ever watched Glow either. Hot and dry here. Yeah, we've been getting lots of rain here in North Carolina. Getting schooled by golden teachers in tiny amounts right now off Vyvanse and on GTs. Life is going to be fast. Nice. That's awesome. Getting schooled by golden teachers in tiny amounts, little micros. Bizarre, but 6-line wise. Yes. I'm a 5/1 manifester, and I'm ready and keep getting supplies together and getting organized for all creative outlets, including many I've never tried and haven't learned yet. I love it. Yeah, kind of something I'm trying to let myself do more is do other things. Like creatively, I'm like always doing music. It feels great. But I used to be, I mean, I draw every now and then, just like cathartically, but um I've always been somebody that's like interested in multi different things and I guess I mastered in some cases for my own ability, and music has been like my specialty, but doing film when I was a kid up until music took off and then I just completely stopped. But then wanting to do sometimes I feel like doing something different every day and seeing it as I guess I've been getting a lot of this in my algorithm lately is allowing oneself to not have to stick to one thing and be multifaceted because the world we're going into is like very much going to be that kind of thing. Um, it's not going to be so individual, like isolated with what you're known to do. I think a lot of people are going to spring into having a lot of individual, authentic expression in many different avenues of like creative output. And I don't think we as a culture are going to really be like putting so much emphasis on being the best of a certain modality, right? Like in music, it's like everyone's hope is to get a Grammy because then you're seen as like the best. And there's this focus on like we have to label the best of every category. And I think as that goes away, which God, that's gonna be a relief, right? But when that goes away, then it's like really the rules have changed, right, for creativity. So it's whatever you want to do, and beauty is going to be more the thing that is like coveted, not coveted, but it's going to be like what we're pushing towards, and beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So like what's beautiful to you really, and how much you can explore that, I think is going to be the currency of the new creative world. So allowing oneself to diversify if it's authentic, it's like one day I feel like drawing, um, dive into it as if it's your going to be your career, with that mentality, like allowing it to like really unfold instead of it being like, I'm just a doodler. Um, I've been trying to embody that. In liminality right now, though, not very easy. I'm kind of just like walking around. It's like working on music and here and there, but then I'm like, fucking what? What do I do? I feel good, but I just kind of like, eh. Oh, Mark Maron is in Glow. Maybe I know what that is. I never watched it. I've got stuff for sewing, knitting, whittling, glasswork, clay, instruments I've never played. Like, what the fuck? Getting so unstuck. Love it. That's awesome. It's good to hear. So I don't really have a plan tonight on what to talk about because of the liminality. I just trusted I'd come on here, and if enough people are hanging out, we could figure out something. But I'm always kind of ranty, so I don't know if there's I said in the Patreon, I'm feeling spicy, which is I'm learning about myself. There's a side of, I guess I equate it in my head to like a Capricornian thing, but I don't know. But there's a side of me that like I used to be when I was like coming of age, so like 18 to 24 or something. Felt like I had this like lightness about me, but then I also, at that time I didn't know what it was, but I had like a depth that was also like sometimes very pointy and sharp at people or ideas or thoughts, and it could be funny when I was light in the reality, but then I had this depth that would just come out. And I think what happened is I started doing this and I actually felt like I hurt people or I said something that was like too much and people would get offended. And so I started to quiet that thing down, which basically just looked like not being truly authentic in the moment. Now later, as I got older and more opportunities to become like bitter, like a bitter projector and kind of serious, that thing that is Capricornian, that's very sharp projector thing too, that just kind of cuts to the point sometimes, would be awful to people. Like, I think I was actually mean in certain parts of my life when I was not taking life a little lighter and not so seriously, and then having this sharp projector, Capricornian, serious kind of Saturnian thing that's like, I think was not the right use of it. Anyways, long story, as I've gotten more okay with this side of me, I'm still learning how to be a projector and all of that stuff for you human designers. But the there's a side sometimes that is like spicy and sharp that can be helpful, I think, as a projector. I've done sessions when I've been in that, not a lot, but I've done a couple sessions where I've been in that, and it's fun to bounce off of when people have questions. So because the spiciness is kind of easier for me to kind of like get to a real point that sometimes is a little bit like, whoa, but that can be helpful, you know. So I'm not saying I necessarily will give a spicy answer, but the reason I felt spicy the last couple of days, I think it's because of the liminality, but also probably pulling up some, as I've been, you know, trying to reflect in this time in an eclipse, pulling up a little bit of rage, or I think it's grief too, but then there's like, you know, there's like a rage layer you go through, sometimes around grief, especially if it's like far away, like in the past. Or maybe that's just because it's something I'm like working on that I hadn't processed. So it's obviously right now there's, when you're new and fresh, when you got to go through some rage layer to then get to the you know, integrated part of it. But as I'm doing that, like then I'm on TikTok and stuff, so I'm kind of in this like a little bit snarky, rageful energy. And sometimes you go on social media, and I love it so much. I love social media. I love all this, like the tech, if you can use it balanced and use it as a guide of sorts. You know, if you know your algorithm, you can have it kind of synchronistically talk to you. And I love all the new art. But then every now and then, because it is reflective of what you're doing, I think, whatever your current state of awareness is, if you're sad, if you're excited, whatever, is going to pretty quickly reflect in your algorithm. And so I'm just getting all these like sides of social media that are like, I don't know, without going too much into it, just fucking annoying. And like in ways that are like, obviously social media can be annoying, but there's parts of the culture that you can see as a whole, um when you see enough of people like kind of responding or acting a certain way, that is very reflective of the collapsing capitalistic culture that we have, that has kind of gotten so sour and so like such a caricature of itself that it sometimes is like funny to watch. But then at certain times I'm kind of like, man, like like people, we're really, as it collapses, like the culture side of this that's kind of hanging on to the competitive capitalistic, this like, you know, the huge part of the cross of planning kind of reality, the capitalism and all of this, the culture side of it is like icky sometimes and very hard to watch as a human that is like a part of the culture. I'm like, man, we're some weird people, like in certain ways. Like I love the weirdness when it's art and when it's like creative, but the butthole of culture right now that is presenting itself on social media is sometimes like, dude. It's like I'm trying to keep a light heart with it because it's like it is in the macro sense and the whole game, it's fun and funny. But I think in the liminality and the rage and the frustration and kind of whatever I'm currently kind of processing in this eclipse, it's like it's dark too, I guess, in some sense, because you do see it as a reflection of what we are as a whole, you know, as a human culture, and primarily in the West. But the West dictates a lot of what other cultures are doing sometimes, big ones. But anyways, you get what I'm putting down. It's it got me feeling spicy, my TikTok algorithm, in the last day or so. What do we got? Gene Keys. Gene Key 29 right now, the path from half-heartedness to devotion through the gift of commitment. I like that. Glows and Trippy is just dang good ensemble show with great character development. Oh, I see, but you were saying it got canceled. Gotcha. Yeah, Capricorn is no bullshit. When we're not taking life seriously, it can be really helpful and fun to be. I took myself seriously for a long time, and then Capricorns suck. I can say as a experiencer of it, well, not, being on the giving end, but, I keep having great moments of clarity that pull me further into observer mode and further away from most people. It's melancholy as hell, but also good. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's kind of like what I was talking about last week, that when you get that clarity, you can sit in that observer position a lot more firmly, and consistently. You can like sustain it. And then reality is like so awesome in those ways. And funny you say it's melancholy as hell, but also good. I've experienced that too, in that moment where you can kind of stay in the observer, very detached. And the melancholy is weird because it's got to be right. Like I instinctively would think it's because, in a sense, you're getting used to being your conscious awareness is getting used to being in a different locale that is kind of something you can never go back from. So there's like this certain, when you're in the ego and you're in life and you're kind of like very entranced in the material world, that once you start to get this other awareness, like, and I think that's why we have to do all this emotional stuff and shadow work and things to make the process even possible of detaching from the visceral reality, the ego reality, this like one pointed awareness. So we're having to kind of collapse some of that in a way that is something that's like very difficult to go back to, because a lot of the beauty of some of this physical existence, I think, is because there's boundaries to it that you can't know this other stuff for this to become so visceral and special and all of these and intense, but I think that detaching from that is like melancholic because we're kind of letting go of something in a real sense of conscious awareness. And um obviously this is like a beautiful thing, and I think we like want to expand it, but it is interesting having to grieve some of these like confusing they're just feelings, but like we don't even know what we're grieving really. It's kind of the whole of the illusion of not knowing that there's more, and that's something we want. But then there's also this like, whoa, you can't really go back from that. At least I assume. I mean, in complexity, it's like same way as like I think about high school and I'm like, I wish I could have done it a little differently now that I know what I know. And it's something that you like can't ever really redo, right? I could go back to college and get a little bit of the experience. I could start living like a high school kid, I wouldn't, but I'm 41, so it'd be weird. But it's something you can't really go back and get. It's like you're once you move on and you grow from that and you get more complexity, it's like it's not what it is. Coming of age time of life too is a very nostalgic time that I kind of blew past me before I even could really enjoy it. I think I enjoyed it, but um it's like stuff you can't repeat, you can't go back to. So I think in all, there's like a huge part of that in our consciousness that we're having to grapple with, of like actually letting go and processing some of that. So it is melancholic, um, for sure. Definitely in that observer removed spot. Pixies are spicy and sharp. I am a pixie. I do connect with the Fae. I made 2 arts yesterday, and it felt like emergency constipation relief. I love that you said 2 arts. It's like 2 farts. I like them. Both pre-started pieces, now finished. Mantra lately is, "Remember that I don't care," because of Simulacrum 60 I love it. Yeah, it's a good mantra. Um Yeah, it's funny how much the process of making art, how much other people's perception when the art's not even done, but the projection in the future of other people's perception of said finished project influences, like, what I'm doing in the moment. Like, I'm making a decision, and I'm like I've talked about this on here before, but I remember when I was, like, was making music, on my own, um, for a while, as I was starting to kind of dig into more of authenticity and stuff, I was trying to get past this point of, like, not emulating anything too much. Anyways, the thing that I recognize is, like, so many of my decisions, I would be, like, going to craft a snare drum sound or something and making all of these tweaks, and I kinda caught myself being like, "Why am I going this direction? Oh, because I like a fat snare. Why do I like a fat snare? Because I also like really high-pitched, cool, like, unique sounding snares, but I'm always going for this fat snare. Like, why am I always kinda making the same drum sound?" It has to be something more than just I like that flavor. I do like the flavor, but it's like it was happening a lot in my drum sound. So I was like, well, "Who am I trying to impress with this? Like, why am I like it, but, like, it's so automated that I'm making that decision." And then I realized I was, like, I was assuming in the future when I released this song, there was a certain friend of mine or a certain group of people that I wanted when they heard it, I wanted them to be like, "Dude, that oh shit, that drum sound is sick," because they like that drum sound. And then I was like, "I don't even fucking care." Like, I'm actually not trying to I just wanna make art and, like, not conform to that decision. And so, like, for my situation, I just realized I was making that subconscious choice, like, in a lot of songs, and it was not allowing as much, I think, of who I am as an authentic person to just allow that to, like, unfold, is to just follow my ear in the moment, you know? And a lot of times for me, it's actually for drums specifically because they can you can make them sound so differently the way you record them, um, and tune them. I usually will not do many adjustments. If it sounds like shit, I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna go with that." If there's a weird setup in there or, like, there's mics that have fallen over, I'm just gonna, like, go with it because sometimes in those mistakes is where you find something that your ear just goes, "Oh, I really like that," and runs with it, and is definitely not premeditated because I didn't even do any adjusting, you know? So, there's ways that I start to the best art really is kind of, like, allowing for many mistakes or many opportunities to have to kinda, like, piece it together because then you're just having to kinda save the day, you're not trying to, like, emulate anything, you're just trying to kinda make it work, and so yeah, it's just insight for me that I've discovered is, it makes it like there really is no rules, like, you can kind of stumble through anything. I love, it's making me think of the artist who's a, um, I wanna say Michael Che. He's the freaking, Cho he's an Asian artist, like, was on Joe Rogan a lot. Shit, I'm not gonna remember. Um, whatever. His theory on art is amazing. He just, like, will squiggle lines. He teaches a lot on Instagram. Not teaches, but he's, like, helping artists. I just love his theory. It's just, like, mistakes after mistakes, and it's just, like, producing a bunch of shit and then trying to, like, make the shit really good, and it makes cool shit. Okay, I'll stop ranting. I got chat. Are the rage layers kinda universal? I thought that was just my dysregulation. Ha! I don't know if it's universal, but I feel like I've heard you hear stories a lot with, grief, rage and grief being associated. I think it probably is universal. I would say probably a lot of people that don't process the grief and get into the emotional parts of it, to just stay on the rage layer and suppress, suppress, suppress over time until something happens in their reality that's, like, rough enough or, like, frustrating enough, and this pressure is built up, and then the rage comes out in a wild aggression and something where they actually make like a really bad mistake in life. Um, so to me, and the grieving that I've done in my life, and I think I'm not like uh, a professional by any means. I haven't had to do a lot of grieving, but and specifically, I would say my grief is associated with like conscious things, like if that makes sense. So let me briefly explain. It's not like I've lost my dad in my life. He died, and there was some grief around that, but it was a odd one because he was sick his whole life. Not a really like great connection with him, but not horrible either. And so it's like a weird grief because for my whole family, like he had almost died so many times. We were like as prepped as you could be for this like final goodbye, and it was very calculated as far as his decline near the end, calculated by meaning like allowing him to smoothly go into that. So very controlled, no sudden things. So there just wasn't a lot of grief with that. But then other than that, like losing a grandma when I was young, I've always had just the grief that's hit me have been like massive times of my life that I've had to actively like let go of and make a decision to go a different way. Whether that was like a group of friends, um, a from like a band, leaving a band to a different band, leaving jobs, leaving careers, leaving my hometown, like all kinds of big things like that. Like, and I just big, it's not just singular person, like a directed love towards someone that I'm having to grieve around that love. It was this like other part. And so on a couple of those, letting go of a certain group of people or a certain part of my life, if there was anything that was like difficult in any of those that created like frustration as I went into a different part of my life and maybe bubbled up later, um, having to grieve some of this stuff, like I had to grieve in time after I made the decision and then years down the line, then realizing how much change has happened and being able to look back at the past of the time that I left and process the beauty of it. And like I longed for it. It was so great. And I could see what it built for. It built me to be a better person. And I learned all of these things. But then the frustration comes up, whatever was going on in that part of my life that was difficult. Um, creates a sense of like rage when I'm trying to kind of feel into the processing the whole that whole part of my life, because it feels like it has made whatever difficulty I'm experiencing in the moment that I'm thinking back from, if there's some kind of challenge, I can easily project and blame it on something that was happening to me in a different part of my life, and I've carried it over. And so there's this rage that comes up for me that is kind of a like, "Fucking motherfucker," it's like mad at either me for in high school, I wish I wouldn't have become so Christian and had more like fun high school things, go to high school parties, like be a little bit more fucking edgy. And so then the part of me that was still dealing with like letting go of Christianity and when I was like 24 to 25 was pissed about the bullshit Christianity gave me to deal with that I was still trying to get out of. And wish that from now being older, I was like, I wish I would have had more fun in high school. God, I went this other direction and it's like, it's created all this mess. And so it was like, it took me a while to kind of be able to place all those emotions where they can properly go through like understanding. And so that rage can kind of keep you on the surface because you're trying to make sense of it all in the conscious awareness that you're presently in. And if that is frustrated or it's like broken, it's like it's hard to get through that rage and just kind of um the odd thing is like once you just don't you let the rage kind of go or process it through art, do whatever, punch a punching bag, go on a run. That's like super helpful for me. Move that energy out. But and then you go into this next level of like emotional grief, which is kind of seeing it more of a beauty thing it's hard because if there's dark parts of it or difficult parts, they're still kind of spicy and like, but they have this like neutrality to them. And then the funny thing is as you process all of that, you come back out and the rage has no value. You're just like, "Oh, I was really in a misunderstanding." Like I could see why I was circling and blaming it on this person or blaming it on this thing in the past, my current present thing. It makes sense, but it has no, because you just went into the depths and finally got through the emotion and you can kind of neutralize it all. The understanding of that makes the rage like not even there. Uh, so it's all this like illusion. It's like magnetics or something. Is what it feels like to get through the rage and let go in whatever way that is. Because it's hard to navigate. It's hard to know where that is. It took me a long time to figure out the high school Christianity regret and deprogramming from Christian beliefs that were not like overt. They were like subtle, highly judgmental of other people and highly critical and not in touch with my body, not in touch with like these other parts of the human experience that I guess got taught to deny to be a good Christian. All of that like took me for fucking ever to process. And yeah, so for me that's where my grief is, and is in those kind of things. And so sometimes it's not applicable to all grief. Although now that I think about it, most people when they lose a loved one, they all describe like being angry, being really like pissed off in some sense, and then eventually like can move into the softer sides of it. But grief's a fucking doozy. I feel like I no longer have a carrot, something to work towards, and it's really weird feeling. I'm not upset at it. It's strange. Also feel like waiting room vibes. Yeah. I've got a carrot. It looks exactly like that emoji. Dude, I feel you on this. I feel like I no longer have a carrot, something to work towards, and it's really weird feeling. I'm not upset at it. It's strange. Also feels like waiting room vibes. Dude, that's exactly the description for the way I feel right now too. Not having a carrot is the wildest thing. And the best I can tell for what's going on with me right now is that, like, my intuition is that the thing that's being adjusted, I think for me, at least with this feeling, is that where I used to place a carrot in front of me, because we do create our own reality or whatever, but there's whatever I'm like that is in front of me that's motivating me to push on or give me ideas or just like activate me in the reality. Um, Wherever that frame is that you usually operate to like follow the carrot is being adjusted to a different way of doing things or a different way of being. And that's the way it feels to me, because there's like a nothing. I mean, dude, for me in my life, there's so quickly I got thrusted into like having to grapple with an existence of there not being any meaning or like a purpose to things. So the times, the biggest one was when I like got successful in a band, and what felt like for me that was enough to like hit the top and be like, okay, now deliver me my happiness and my like contentment and meaning and value and like who I am. I'm going to feel like what we all think it's going to feel like when you get successful or famous or whatever it is in your head. And it didn't deliver that in a weird way. That was like, there were great things, but some of them didn't really matter to me. Like a lot of the like overt attention from being in a successful band the like grabby attention, you know. I enjoyed when people liked my art, of course, but then there was this other side of it, that attention I did not like. But then other things like financial support and things like that were great. But I kind of had already learned in life that like a lot of the extremities and things, material goods you get, like they wear out, like, as far as my interest in them and my love for them, you know? Um, Side note, I wanted a Tickle Me Elmo when I was younger, and I wanted it so bad for, like, 6 months, it felt like, that I was just like, "Please let me have one, please," and my mo like, we just couldn't afford it or something, I couldn't get one. I had built up so much, like, my life was for Tickle Me Elmo. I was like, "If I get this, I am going to just finally feel good." And I got it, and I felt like that for, like, 2 days, and then within 2 weeks, that shit was, like, on the floor under the bed, broken, and, like, it didn't mean anything to me. Um, and I remember at that age clocking that being like, "Whoa." I, like, totally thought that Elmo was going to make my life amazing, and it didn't, and so I was kind of like with the material success of it, as far as like money and being able to get a house and stuff, I kind of was like, this is great, but I'm not, I know my value as a human won't exist. I won't find it in a house or a bigger house or 5 houses. I won't find it there. So it troubled me for a long time where I was like, I stayed in a career for a long time being not really happy with it, but loving it too, loving, like, I mean, doing music in any capacity is a spiritual thing for me, and so I love that, but everything else that was around it was troubling me because I just didn't know how to feel content and feel the thing that we're all wanting to feel by pursuing some craft and, like, feeling successful, you know? I think a lot of us are figuring it out now, but for me, having these, where was I going with this? Started with the carrot, but it's the thing that I think is shifting right now, like, for me, is where I used to chase the carrot, that frame of thinking, like, "Why am I having passion of doing to do this?" There still is in a lot of us, like, a performative aspect of creating art that is a difficult one to sense as far as, like, because there's a usefulness to performing your authentic self. Like, we want to do that, and to finish that cycle, it needs to be seen. So doing art or doing expressing like who you are, an idea out that's authentic is you want to perform it in a way, because you're performing your authenticity. If you're doing it to like anything else to cater towards whoever's going to be viewing it and seeing it, is where you start to get into trouble about pursuing a path that ultimately will not satisfy you. It will not give you any, like, fulfillment in the pursuit of feeling, like, valued in life and feeling loved and contentment with yourself more than anything, but then being able to have someone view an authentic thing and, have that exchange. There is, like, a it's just a slippery slope with how I think a lot of us, and me included, like, doing when I'm doing art, I'm hyper there's like a subconscious part of me that is still calculating and trying to control what someone else is gonna view, how they're gonna view my art or whatever I'm gonna do. And you can apply this even if you're not an artist, just to like how you're showing up in life. And if you're ever in front of a big group of people, the way that like calculating how much you're performing for their to meet their needs and make yourself feel loved through them. I just For me and a lot of the stuff I've learned in life, there's no actual happiness in doing it that way. Like, you'll just endlessly go into more altered versions of yourself that aren't actually authentically you. They're, like, catering to an audience, they're catering to a trend, they're catering to the viewers of yourself, you know? And it's so weird because there's, like it's a slippery trap, and I think The odd thing is in the culture right now, it rewards you bending towards an audience, like trending and following trends, and here's how to get the most followers. It's all this like competitive thing that's still going on with identity that's like captivating because you can succeed in the culture right now as far as like being able to get monetary value or get material abundance. But my God, it doesn't really ever fulfill your soul, fulfill this like deep void that I think a lot of us are kind of chasing. It's not always like that for everybody. I think, I'm a deep fucking nerd, Capricorn. But so I like depth. But yeah, I don't know if that helps because the carrot, I hate that feeling, man. Not having something to chase and something to work towards. I will say, as another note, for me, when I'm not in this liminal space, I feel like I'm having to adjust where I'm chasing my authentic expression from. That's the other thing. It's like you're not chasing anything. You're just changing, like, why am I doing this? But that's shifting into some other thing. I don't know if it's more this observer category or like if I'm still actually, when I'm creating art, I'm still performing for someone, I guess, or something. But anyways, my point is the pursuit. A lot of the times when I'm not in this energy, I do find a lot of gas in the tank and meaning and like this drive to chase something when I realize I really don't care what, like, I'll have moments of like, I don't care what anybody fucking thinks. And then I get excited to go in and be like, what are we, dude? Holy shit. Nobody, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. What are we? And there's like, you explore that by like showing up at whatever your craft is with literally no rules. You're just like fucking painting, like you just like go for it because you're discovering like, where am I? Even as much as we think we know ourselves, when comes to art and creativity, it's like when you approach with no rules is where you're actively trying to go to recognize patterns in it. Essentially, if you're making a mess, like, where is the cool pattern that is me? And you like discover it in the process. That's the fucking gold right there, is to be able to have that ability to do that. And so I do, if you're recognizing like you really don't care, you can understand what I'm saying. It's like, don't pursue trying to perform for literally anybody. It's like, it's gonna take you away into a world that you're gonna fucking not like, especially as it's collapsing. I mean, God. And so then you're just like, you literally don't care. It opens up a portal where there's just like all this new shit. And that is a carrot to follow because it kind of becomes endless. And then it becomes effortless too. And so we very well may right now be being put into a position where we're having to jump into, we're all still performing and we're having to be kind of like, hey, stop fucking doing that. It's not, it's like offline right now. So none of us are able to do anything. It's liminal. Trying to get into this perspective that I'm saying, that is this like, literally it does not matter what anybody thinks. And not only that, but like what I even checking whenever I'm making a decision in my art, like, is this coming from me? You almost like shouldn't, if you're in flow, you won't even be able to know that. You're just going to be doing it. But if you can kind of catch yourself and be like, am I making this decision because for music, it's because I've heard bands that I like this, or I like this sound because of something else. It's a hard, because you can get inspired by other artists. I love doing that. But being able to then go, okay, but my taste is like all of these things together. And that is like, you can't think about it. You have to like go for it. But so you get in flow that way. But just breaking down some of these things, like in your own decision-making process in the art, like making sure there is no motivation towards bending your authenticity towards some other, of any kind. I relate to having more clarity and less people. Sorry, I'm like way back in the chat here. Let me get down. What do we got? Rage layer is real. I'm feeling this too, related to like cracking off the patriarchal horseshit that I've let suppress my own deep feminine my entire life. Incredible Hulk shirt ripping off rage. I love it. I mean, I gotta say, dude, the divine feminine rage is like in the field for sure. I like as I've talked in these last 4 or 5 weeks, um, I said it a million times there, but it feels like it's definitely in the field. So that is like support. Rage for art is amazing. Big waiting room vibes. They just said I feel like I'm getting ready for all this art and cleaning up my space. I'm not taking action yet. I hope I'm able to start. Let's see. I had an interesting experience with rage last year. Anger was an actionable secondary emotion. The underlying feeling being disgust. No one wants to sit with feeling of disgust. Yeah. Yep. David Cho. I knew somebody would get it in the comments. I can't look at the chat and talk. Oh, nice. We got some FTP people in here. FTP people. Yeah, as I started putting this on my Instagram, I didn't know some old fans were gonna come in. It's been a few years since you left FTP. How does that make you feel? Is it what you would have imagined years ago? Is it what you would have imagined years ago? I don't know what I would have imagined years ago, but I mean, I don't know if you're talking about the band or not, but no, it's funny. Everything I was just kind of saying, there is with these like different eras of my life that I've realized I've been changing scenes so many times in life that there's like this grief that comes up because once you leave a certain time period of life, like I was talking about high school, the coming of age years, um, you never really can have those experiences again. You're never gonna be able to capture the naivety and the kind of zest of like just being in the moment then. And so having shifted and changed a lot of things in my life, like I've done that a lot. And then this was like probably the biggest one is just the band and everything that it was. Um, I've had to like grieve in many different ways, like as I've gone through it. There was definitely a rage layer, for a part of it in the beginning. But it's been like awesome to kind of have this other place of existence that I've been able to land and change and even change multiple times since I left. It's been, whatever, it's 7, 8 years. I'm bad with time. Long enough. So it's something that I'm really fond of, and I think there is even in parts of like whatever liminal space we're in right now, me doing a little more grieving on that, just because it's in a positive way where it really is one of those times that you'll never be able to capture again. And it's awesome to kind of like have a way to go look at it online, and kind of I have a lot of photos and stuff, a lot of memories to be able to like immerse myself back in it in a very like fond way and very beautiful way. So it's been awesome to have this kind of maturing and growing up, beyond that like era of my life, and it not being so much of my identification anymore. Um, and landing in a new place that I feel very happy to be in and very, like, content and secure, and, I can look back at that now and just be it's, like, so fucking magical, so really cool. It's great. Um, yeah. It made me think about I was just actually on TikTok before this, and I don't know if you guys ever watched How I Met Your Mother? How I Met Your Mother? Um, that TV show, I was obsessed with it, and, uh, I saw on TikTok that one of the stars, like, the main guy, Ted, they were doing an interview or something, and they asked him, like, "Hey, do you, like, talk to any of the cast ever? Are you guys, like, really good friends?" And he was like, "No, actually, like, we don't talk at all." And but he had this beautiful thing where he was like, you know, "It's not a bad thing, like, I text them here and there, but, like, we're not in each other's lives at all and haven't been for a long time." And he was like he had this beautiful moment of saying, you know, "There is this magic, like, to be around people for you know, day after day, and you become so close to them and they become such a, like, huge part of your life in a way that you kind of at the in the present moment of that you would never imagine that it would ever be any different, like you're going to know these people for the rest of your life, but things happen, and when the show ended, I guess, you know, they all kind of just, like, went into their other parts of their lives and just separated paths. And so there was no, like, bad feelings or harshness. There was, like, a little bit of, like, some tension within the show as all art has that. Um, so yeah, as he said that, I was like, "Oh, man, that's, like, exactly kinda how I feel about the band right now," is, like, it was so magical. It was hard for me for a lot of things I was talking about earlier 'cause, I didn't know what the fuck reality was if, like, that thing, that kind of success didn't make you happy, you know? I was struggling with that after the first 2 years, after the whirlwind of the first record going out, you know, like, that pink cloud of success, that was all fucking fantastic and amazing, and it was, like, everything I could have ever imagined. So fun. I was so young, but it was so fun. But then, like, when we got off the road and there was, like, some downtime, that's when it all hit me. I was like, What is like, why am I not completely satisfied?" And from that point on, I was, like, trying to figure that out. So, that's why, I mean, I think it's, like, only now can I've thrown enough time and processing it in different chunks, can I approach it and be like, "Wow, this is really beautiful." As difficult as it was for me, and, like, it's not even, like it was my issue mostly. The tension that for me, what it created was just kind of like my own, like, searching for fulfillment and knowing I can't find it in this certain aspects of this. Again, not musically. Musically, it was like this most spiritual thing I've ever experienced. It was fucking great. Cat ate roast carrots with Tahar last night. I love the cat is in here. Um, my life is also for the Tickle Me Elmo. Dude, I wanted it so bad. Here's the embarrassing thing. I think I was like 14, maybe 13. So, like, it was a little old for the Tickle Me Elmo. Like, most people at Toys R Us that were shopping for it were, like, you know, 7-year-olds or something. But I wanted it so bad. It was when I was in middle school. I was like a goth kid in middle school. Like, yeah, 6th grade, 7th grade, I was gothy. I had, like, a dog chain. I had hair parted pink, shaved underneath. I wore all camo, listened to White Zombie, and Tickle Me Elmo was fucking dope, so I wanted it. Okay, sharing too much Tickle Me Elmo lore. Cat recognizes an nihilism but preferred to lean towards experiencing it as absurd. Oh, yes. Yeah, oh, yeah, I saw that up here, Angela was saying. Definitely trying to find the freedom in nihilism, you know, nothing matters, then nothing matters. Yeah, it's a, It's a frequency, I guess, or something. Where did I leave off? Okay, we got more Elmo. I worked with Elmo. He's a freak. The Muppet Hut was wild. Tickle Me Elmo came out when I worked with him, and we were like, dude, Elmo, enough. We get it. Like when someone comes out, Elmo Rush. I found that you, the artist, is the worst judge of what will turn anyone on. Yes. What's up, Krugs? It's been kind of devastating for me to comprehend how so much of my ability to play piano came from channeling from a place of imagining being perceived as worthy of their attention. Dude, yeah, I'm telling you, it can be devastating to recognize that in yourself, but again, then move towards like the understanding of the way the culture is like making you think that. I mean, like, and that's and ever the, I don't know when you commented this after all the blabbering I just did, but a lot of the stories I'm talking about is the illusion that I experienced, like, and I'm saying this isn't just some fucking sick idea I'm talking about. Like, I experienced this in reality is that there's so much in the way you become an artist and you kind of rise into like finding meaning in it as a child or whatever. Whenever you're young enough, it's just like this fun thing, and then you get to a point where adults are making you be serious in life, and you're like, you got to choose something to do. And so most hungry ass artists are like, I'm doing this. I'm not fucking going to 9 to 5. I got to do this. And so then you'll drum up a way to kind of make money at doing it. And sometimes it's not even like an overt, like, I'm gonna go make money. It's just like I don't want to work a 9 to 5. So if money, I gotta get this shell for people. I gotta get this money for people. So I'm gonna figure out how to make money at this. But also being an artist and being like, I'm pursuing my own shit. But there's like, to function in the reality, you kind of have to think capitalistically to avoid being. Most artists don't want to fucking work a B job, a B job, like a bumblebee job. I mean, like a hive mind job. So you end up having to conform to it in some way. And I'm saying that, like, if you're an artist pursuing it, but then also like in the way culture is in movies and like other art, everything is kind of this commoditized thing. And so it's in the programming everywhere. It's just like kind of competitive nature. So it's like it's okay that it's there. That's like when you understand that it's like, geez, shit's everywhere. But in my experience of like trying to find happiness in it, maybe I didn't look hard enough. Maybe 5 mansions and like 2 yachts would have given it to me. But as far as I could deduce, there was like a never-ending spiral into more chaos and more like material shit, more responsibility, more bending towards some other thing, whether it's first at fans, but then it's like sponsors, and then it's people that are funding you, and then it's like labels, and you're bending towards whatever, and then you get more money, and then you start playing in bigger games that are like all about billionaires, and then you start bending towards it gets into this crazy spiral. And that's where it all leads. It's not saying like if you just are performing a little bit for somebody, you're going to end up being all the way up there, but that's the vibe that way, is this like endless pursuit of people of you trying to make yourself like happy and feel love and secure. And so most people are running from some trauma. But the thing that I just felt, it was like it didn't work. And so then as I've discovered more and more, it's like the only thing that'll actually give you that feeling, well, it's obviously spiritual and individual for everybody to like find that, but as an artist, it's just like figuring out like truly what you can do and no one else can do. Because that's like a truth that everybody has. Like there's literally something that everybody like you can do that like no one else can do. As far as what you've experienced in life, how you do things, how you've learned to move, all of the nuances. It's like truly one of a kind. And that finding that in the metaphor of life too for your conscious, like spiritual self, I think is a huge metaphor there. But in the practice of doing art, like that's where all the satisfaction is, as far as if that succeeds into the capitalistic system, that is truly your authentic thing and you're not fucking bending for anybody. Bob Dylan was a good example of that. David Bowie is a good example of that. Um, and probably they were still, caught up in some performative thing. It was a different time. But get what I'm saying? So there's like, if that does work, like great. It's like a little bonus, but like you don't need it. So it could go away if you decide to go left and everybody hates you. It's all good. Like you're already abundant in your reality. And that's really like where I am discovering that's like where the true happiness is, I think. And so recognizing these things, it's like it is devastating to realize like I've been making all these decisions or like seeing myself even if you're not making you see yourself as this the way you're like performing your mask is like bent towards what somebody else is going to think of you, even if you're afraid of what somebody's going to think if you're not good, or you're trying to please somebody or whatever that is. It's a goddamn nightmare. But it's so good to just be able to kind of recognize them and then turn it back on yourself and then just explore oneself with this like complete curiosity and trust and make a bunch of shit for a little bit. Well, it's not shit. I'm learning to enjoy playing for me. Not that it was completely that, but it's new for me to just sit down and play without a cause. I love it. Mark Manson's book, Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, helped me solidify this ethos and follow my heart into a professional mascot career. Dude, that's amazing. I have that book. I love that book. I had it sitting over here, actually. That's great. When I started, when I was 6, it was pure joy of pattern recognition and sound moving through me. As I got older, it became kind of addicting to visualize certain people that I saw as above me, to finally be like, "Whoa, you really are cool, not a weirdo, neat nerd freak." Yeah. And see, there's like it's, I resonate with this so much, man. I used to do this too. It's like all about, uh this kind of vibe of like, I'll show them, people that are maybe never you feel like they never understood you or whatever, and there's a desire to kind of embody this talent and this gift and then let them see it and be like, "Whoa, like, I wish I was nice to that person," or like they finally see you, you know? But, there's like a yeah, it's hard because it's good to visualize things. I mean, at least for me, I've always loved visualizing, guess you can call it even a part of like manifesting in some ways, but you're when you have the carrot you're chasing in art or whatever it is that you're wanting to do, wherever the spot is that you're pursuing, whether it's like on a big stage in an arena or in a small jazz club, or I'm just thinking about music, but that it becomes this thing that you can, I think visualizing and placing people in the crowd, is part of it, and there can be this ability to draw passion for, like, the finitude, the, like, finalizing and actually, like, following through with manifesting this that can be, to solve issues in your life of, like, not feeling recognized. Like, there is value in that if the authentic thing is embodied, you know, and you're not like performing towards that, but you're using it as a part of a way to be like put gas in the tank of like making me have a passion to actually finish this. It's a bit performative in a way, but you can see what I'm saying. It's like kind of on yourself in a conscious way where you can utilize it to express an emotion in the purpose for like finishing the art, you know. So there has like this nuance and part of it. At least for me, I've felt that because I'm a very visual person, as you brought this up. I mean, I like um you know, I don't know what like when I'm making art, it's like visual in some sense where I'm kind of like imagining it in some sense, whether it's like being performed or being listened to, you know. Dun, 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 dun. I personally want to be deeply witnessed, which is part of the appeal of creating music and performing. Less that I want them to like the sound of it, but that they have an opportunity to witness me. See, that's really great. I love that. There are a lot of healthy ways to, you know, embody this, like wanting to be witnessed. Even using the term witness is better than seen. Um, and there's a connection that happens when anybody is doing art in a relational sense, whether there's an audience or there's some kind of like in-person kind of energy exchange. Obviously, there's like a really great healthy pursuit to want to be witnessed in that way. Um, I think part of it too, you know, there's going to be this new space of like I just imagine as the world changes, it turns into like for this artistic renaissance of deep authenticity, not like competitive spirit, and just this like very individualistic renaissance that um, there's going to be a lot of like performance style innovations that are more centered around smaller groups and more intimacy in the process of if it's music, like how it is, amplified or not, how it kind of creates this environment and people come to connect with the music, like, almost etherically, and the artist becomes a huge portal of that part, but it's like all of the audience is trusted to not, like, project onto this person, "They're so fucking awesome," or, like, "This person's stupid." There's not this, like, judging thing, competitive spirit. So when all of that's out of the way, there's like this beautiful thing that I think will start to bubble up that is going to be part of a renaissance, part of new innovation of how art is performed and how people connect on these smaller scales when everyone is balanced and there's this like there's less of this competitive spirit and more of this collaborative effort. um Witnessing people that are authentic and truly are like expressing and bringing forth this new like beautiful thing, and the audience being one that's responsible not to like project onto or lift up and create this like chasm of trap into this kind of performing for other people. So I think when all that is out, there's going to be like more of this kind of thing what you're saying. um It's funny, as I got out of the band, I had to actually get I had to crawl back to be able to, like, embody what you're saying, is be like, there's a part of me that wants to be seen. I was so anti, like, attention and fame and stuff, and that's not even fame, like, it wasn't, like, crazy fame, but it was attention that was, like, I had a lot of I figured out I had a lot of, like, some fake people around me, you know, people that, like, didn't really actually see me, but there's a part of it that was, like, um so traumatizing to like I just didn't I wanted to do art and I wanted to make like anonymous account. I wanted to be this like trickster behind where like you never knew it was me. And that was like what I was gonna do. And like as I kind of healed and got out of some of that, I was like, no, okay, this is like I was running from something. But now there is this like I had to crawl back this part of me that it's like okay to say, you know, you want to make art and have people see it, you know, and you want to get recognized as the authentic self that is correlated to said art, you know, and whatever that means, you know, that's all. And so there has to be we do have to, like, grab a hold of that and be like, "It's okay to want to be seen," but also being aware of this, like, negative framework, which is really tied to capitalism, cross of planning kind of elements, and as that goes away, it's no longer gonna be an issue, but it's still got a lot of, like, hook on the reality, as we as it falls apart. I mean, I'm really bad. I'm back on this chat. Okay, hold on. I always do this. Whoops. Boom, 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 boom. Sort of off topic, but with music as a whole and its relationship with films has always been an interest of mine. Same for me. So, what has been the most impactful soundtrack to you, whether it's all original or not? Ooh, good question. Um, yeah, it's funny because music for me, I started actually. I mean, I played drums when I was a kid, like in school, because it was cool, and then I got into making films before I really got, like, super pulled by music. I got pulled by music when I went into the church and became a part of the band, 'cause then we were in a it was like a garage band stuff. So, um, film was still kind of the dominant thing, but anyways, my point is, as I went to film school, it was like my big pursuit. I realized, like, basically what I really liked doing is most of the time when I would come up with an idea to film something, it was driven from music. So I would hear a song and then the visuals would come up and then I'd be like, "Oh, here's an idea," because it's tied to the emotion. So I realized actually as I was in film school, I was like, "Wait a minute, the music is making it's my creative void. Like that's where all the visuals are coming from. I think I want to do music because I want to pursue this like whatever this feeling is, the emotion that pulls me." And so then I didn't, I went and did music, but then now later in my life, I'm like back into doing that again. And so I'm just saying all this because it's crazy how much music and visuals are tied. For me, they're like one and the same. And so I've always been really like moved by soundtracks. I've been not so much, I guess, I was gonna say not so much more like orchestra soundtracks or the ones that are like really immersive cinematic kind of things. I've always been drawn towards soundtracks that were like a bunch of songs from different bands that somebody, put together, and I almost wanted to do that as a job for a while. I forget the name of that, but, there's a job title of that. Um, and man, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of a soundtrack that I could say is the best, but I'll just name a couple that come off my head. So the Interstellar one is really great as far as like a concurrent one. That fucking song that's like everywhere on TikTok, that shit is so good. It hits every time. It hits this like certain emotion. You're just like, fuck. And I like it because it's melancholic. It's like very haunting and weird. Then there are older ones that were like when I was young, I was really into Vanilla Sky is like a super emotional one for me. Vanilla Sky soundtrack, um, Magnolia soundtrack, and then Memento is popping up, but I don't know if I remember the sounds from that, but I feel like in my memory when I was a kid, like very influential soundtracks at the time. Um, and then there was one other one that's like a funny one, like I can see I don't remember the name. I see the visuals. It's like a It feels like Matrix. Oh, Snatch with Brad Pitt. Okay, I could go on about that forever. I was driving when you mentioned this, so I couldn't respond, but the bit about making art to be seen for an audience reminds me of the shift that happens when quantum particles are observed. Ooh, nice correlation. Umami, mommy, mommy. While art doesn't need an audience is a big part of it. Yes. Dude, totally. That, I think when I started learning about the quantum stuff, the observer and all this, there was a conundrum. Conundrum. I remember at the time, because that wasn't that long ago, actually pulling off another layer of the part of me that was still kind of being like, I don't need to be seen. You know, I'm like, I don't fucking need to do that. I can just be a hermit and kind of make my art and just, I'm good. But when I realized that was like the observer effect at the quantum level of this reality. So we're talking everything. You can't not be seen. It's like it's a part of the foundation of reality, right? Because like if God is everything and like we're all separate of it, and why that's fucking happening is because so he can see us. It's like so you have to be seen. And then all this simulation fucking rabbit hole stuff has like got me to this point where I'm like, oh yeah, there's in the dimensions and stuff. I'm like, we're being watched right now, dog. Talk about you don't need an audience. There's a fucking hyperdimensional audience in this room right now watching. They all showed up too, I guess. That's not a. I'm riffing, but you know what? It's like you get to this level where you can, and you know, if you start to have psychedelics or altered states, you're like you experience it. And you're like, okay, shit's real. What does it mean? You know, and then we're all trying to figure that out. But I just realized I was cornered at a certain level, like with this quantum idea you're bringing up, the observer, that I was like, I'm trying to not have an audience when there's like parts of myself that is viewing whatever the other part of reality that is observing, and it's not in a fucking weird way where it's like watching us naked. It's just like this is reality. It's the same way when we're playing a video game, we're like watching the other people in the game. You know, it's like neutral, but you can't avoid this like natural desire in conscious experience is to kind of be recognized by other conscious beings, and all that can happen within having an experience of another, you know. It's so like so many things, right, that are just basically on that foundation of being seen and expressing authentically, you know. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And just to be clear, like what I'm saying is the corrupted part of notoriety and fame and like needing to be the best and meeting that part of this like shadowy part that's trying to be seen and validated via some external thing is, you know, the rant that I was going on. And that's just because I experienced that shit in reality. Artemis naked in a grove, 6 her dogs on a hunter who sees her naked without permission. Yeah. I don't want to be witness because I can't access the place I have to go to bring back that thing. Yeah, that's tough. There might be a part of you that could help you access that place, though. At least I've done that before. There was a thing in middle school I talked about on here before, but just briefly. The thing that was like a huge trauma in my life that like basically made me become a people pleaser and be afraid to be myself and kind of perform for other people. That's what people pleasing is. And I ditched a part of myself. All goes back to this experience in middle school, 8th grade, 7th grade, I think. And I didn't know it was there for the longest time until I kind of had to, in this pursuit of like why I'm not happy, like I got back to that point of being like, why am I such a people pleaser? It finally nailed it down to that moment, but to kind of get there because it was kind of painful. Because I eventually like active imagination, like kind of went back to it. and even experienced like some sort of, I don't know what it was, if it was in the moment because it's such an active imagination, or it was a phantom from the past, but I remember experiencing, it was so visual for me. I was over my shoulder when this trauma happened with this, basically this girl talked to me. She said something to me that made me fucking misunderstand something about myself for a long time. Not that traumatic, but like going back and realizing how much of my life had happened that was from this, it was now traumatic. And so there was this thing where I felt myself over my shoulder as a kid. And at one point, myself as a kid turned and like looked, and I like went like this, and it like he like looked by me, and then he went back, and then the thing happened. And then as I came out of that like meditation, then I was like, I kind of felt, I was like, tried to feel back in my real memory of it, like that, not in the active imagination. Did I, when before it happened, did I go like that because I felt something, you know? And I don't know if it was something I like kind of drummed up through the active imagination, but I do, there's parts of that that like I later, as I started to believe that that's what happened, I was just kind of like, okay, that's, I think that's actually what happened. It allowed me to recognize a certain connection possibility in what we say is sometimes our guide or our higher self, this other thing that, for me, and having that experience, I was like, that shit, it's like connected. And even if it didn't happen in the moment, the way that I kind of imagined back into it, like when I was young and felt the presence of something, it was so real that I was like, that a lot of the times is something when, for me, when I've realized that connection's so strong, I'm way more apt to like ask, and not knowing if, I don't know if it's the past, future, I'm gonna experience that later, like, when I actually ask and like, I know the connection's there, it can help me go pursue a thought or pursue a trauma or something. It can kind of, like, assist. I don't know if that makes any sense, but for me, it was like it's a great idea, you know, like, a lot of people talk about that, but having an experience like that for myself, and I don't know if it was my imagination, but it was enough to make me go, like, change that relationship because I could see how it functions. I felt how it functioned, how connected that is, and that, like, is a real, it is a help. It's not gonna just be, like, do reality for you, but in moments where there is, like, an overwhelm of emotion, there's a space where you can kind of just let go and trust, and then it informs the experience, and it catches you in this kind of, like, it's not as bad. Well, that makes sense, but that part of, like, you have to kind of let go, and a lot of it is where, when you ask for that help, is that's where it comes in, because you have to let go for it to come in. So that, it's individual for everybody, the way that that feels. Letting go is always difficult because you don't know what's on the other side, right? So it's like, it's usually in a part of us that doesn't, like, it's not really even aware. That's why the metaphor of jumping and landing in a feather bed is so good. You can't know the feather bed is there for the metaphor to be cool. Uh, you have to, it could be spikes, but then you go, well, I trust it. And then poosh, feather bed. And it does kind of come down to just like trusting that that sounds right or feels right, or that enough other people have said it to be like, well, maybe it's true, and then just go. And then there's a fine line between making art without expectation and then playful curiosity versus getting lost in audience capture. Yes, all is paradox. Umami, mommy, mommy. Yeah, I love this. So we're going back and forth of like both sides of it are applicable. That's why it's interesting to talk about. Okay. I just had a thought. I know I'm really behind in this chat. I'm gonna get down to it. But I just had a thought. In this conversation about back and forth about performance, perception, audiences, There is this part of me that keeps trying to figure out what is the potential complexity and like evolution of what expressing authentically as an artist can be. You know, like with the way AI is now, no matter what you think about it, good or bad, it has opened up like so many new abilities for artists, and it's happening so fast, like we can't even keep up enough to learn the new tools to be able to get these fucking wild ideas out, because you kind of have to like recognize like, whoa, there's a tool that can potentially do what I've been imagining since I was a kid, and I don't need $1 million to do it. Like, whoa. And so the tool kind of informs like, oh, I can do this idea. So now I got to learn the tool. The next week, a new tool pops out that you're like, oh shit. And then I could also add this idea. Artists can't even like keep up with the amount that it's opening for any individual authentic expression that like you could ever want to come out is going to be able to come out in a way that has like a lot of ability to express the fullness of it without having any limitation of barrier of entry of like, I need enough money to get this really cool idea across or whatever. So for me, and when I'm thinking about it as an artist, I'm like, this levels the playing field in such an amazing way if you're not approaching art in any competitive spirit. If you're approaching it in a competitive spirit, this is the most frustrating leveling of the playing field, because this is why we're seeing so many people complain about it. It's taking our jobs, it's copying my music and all of that. It's like valid reasons, but if you're not in a competitive market, it's like, yeah, who fucking cares? You know, and like, because you're going to just pivot left to the next piece of art, and you're going to keep, and if they keep copying it, it's like it'll balance itself out. And actually what I'm saying is like, I know that could start to get into like chaos. If anything though, it's just going to devalue art in general if it keeps going that way. I don't think it's going to, because that's a capitalistic model, and there's already a lot of people that are not competitive with their art. And there's so much amazing art online right now, and like 5 followers, 5 listeners, and it's like incredible, and it's so cool and authentic. It's a unique, one of a kind. It's not copying anything. So it's happening. And I do think that that's where we're going, right? So the positive model of this is there are so many innovations and tools and consciousness also expanding in a more balanced way, that what does it mean to be authentic and express? Like, okay, anything's possible. So how good is my imagination? How much can I, come up with? And then what are all, with my new complex understanding of consciousness and interconnectedness with humans and how all these things are working on a bigger level, there's all these other like storylines and ways to create metaphor and symbology and new ways of like leveling up the depth of art, like in the poetic metaphor way, how certain poems can like reach into the depths of other meanings in life just through like putting words in a certain way. Now you're going to have this ability to do it on so many other levels that it gets overwhelming. I'm like, I can see there's an artistic renaissance coming. It's already kind of happening in an underworld on the internet. But then there's a thing where I'm kind of like, okay, it can get really immersive if there's a, I try to make this short as possible, but if we get into a reality that is like highly collaborative and there's an excitement for everybody to collaborate, and it's a higher consciousness element, so it's more complexity and understanding, and there's also a balance, a neutrality. And so there's just an excitement for new ways of interconnecting, new technology, and new expression of authenticity. And the value not being this like, what is my art worth and buy it from me? It's this exchange, and so it's beautiful. But then it starts to be with the way the technology is already becoming kind of as an option. It's like immersive, with VR headsets or whatever, 360 cameras, and this like whole other world that is happening within the way not only we can express our authenticity through the technology, but then as an experiencer, experience other people's work through immersive qualities. So I love there's like a lot of really cool art happening like in immersive spaces. So the way they have like screens and lights, and even Fred again did this really cool immersive sound kind of bath experience, but it was like fresh and new, and like the lights are all correlated, everything, it's like super immersive. Um it starts to get to this like it's this crazy world where it's like almost overwhelming with all of the potentials. And so then I started to think about, I don't know what this is, I don't think any of us do, but the ideas that are put forth where in a dimensional shift like this, there is a removal of some of the material part of the reality or the ego attachment, that you become more ethereal and so less weighted to the physical body and the physical reality. And whatever that transference is, there seems to be what eventually will become, maybe not in our lifetime, but a way to like your extended life is like a different kind of idea. And so you can kind of um, extend it in a way that like change also it gives you certain ability to start to be able to control the way you appear. And at a certain point, that would be, this is probably way forward, but at a certain point, that would just be like your artistic expression of like how you show up in any given moment. So sometimes I would, on the extreme level, I would show up as like a bird creature with a certain that's like my emotion at a certain time. And then the different times when I'm more serious, I show up as like a fucking lizard, or whatever. But it's not like I'm an actual lizard. It's just this is the way that I'm presenting, and symbolically referenced, everyone knows what that means. They don't even have to, it doesn't have to be like a specific thing. It's just it's got this snake energy, it's got this slithery energy. It's got this like, and so then they're aware it's like this person's in a like kind of edgy mood. It's not into the extreme of like they're cunning and they're gonna, I mean, and if it is, maybe it is just this like, okay, we just like stay away from that. There's no like trying to get rid of it or suppress it, and it also doesn't get out of control where it's like attacking people. You see what I'm saying? It's like the essence of who you are in those moments where if there's more complexity, there's more stabilization in a neutral zone of awareness, that you start to be able to kind of, your emotions and the way that you are, your energy is expressed through physical form, because that's the most communicative way that doesn't require words and all of this other recognition. And it would almost say like some people see that now, like people that read energy really well, they're maybe not visually seeing it, some of them maybe do, but they can say that there's like this person's energy and they describe it in a certain way. They're already picking, like we're already kind of doing that. But I do wonder if as we move into like a more ethereal existence, which again isn't no matter, so it's just more malleable matter, I would assume, more controllable and therefore more expressive. If we're all, a sense of this game, looking at it is like it's all kind of a creative act. And so there is this, if you're an artist, you're like really into that. But even if you're not an artist, there's this like we are showing up in a certain form for like there's a choice of some sort happening. There's something like that going on. But without getting in the weeds, I'm just thinking in the very, very future, it's like artists are going to be like, you can present as anything. How do you want to dress your avatar? The way people dress their avatars in Fortnite, for God's sake, is like, oh my, it's like a toy store running around, and there's like every kind of figure, different Viking, like Sonic the Hedgehog, so many different avatar adjustments that are individualistic for whoever the person. It's like obviously somebody's running around as Batman, like the person playing that is like a Batman like fan. So it's communicating something. So in the same way, I think our avatars, we're going to start to be able to control that more. And that's just so exciting as like a artist, just an art. You're just like, oh shit, there's the creativity becomes so immersive in the entire experience of the way you're going to express and engage with others, that that's like so fun to me. But maybe I'm fucking smoking something. I am not smoking something, but okay, now I'm really back in the chat. Let me catch back up. Okay, wait, whoa, this is crazy. I had a dream last night that Mark was explaining Saturn transits to me in a room of others, and then a chameleon came that spout out a frog that jumped on me, and we were wondering if it was poisonous. Whoa. That's fucking crazy. Because I was thinking about Saturn like all day yesterday and today. Obviously, it's in astrology right now, so and obviously you know my chart, Virgo. But Virgo witch. I'm not a Virgo, but uh and then I was also today I was looking at videos of I'm just explaining my syncs that I see and you telling me the dream you had. So this is like a sync fucking show. So, but just quickly, I was looking at old photos. I have all these like old photos when I was a kid, and there's one of me like with my first drum kit, and I forgot that I had this wallpaper in my room that had this huge Saturn on it, and so that's me in front of the drum kit, and the Saturn's on the back, and I was already thinking of Saturn. And I was just clicking through the photos, and it popped up, and I was like, "Whoa!" And it's just funny because Saturn is so in my astrology that even as a kid I didn't know it. I love it when you can look in life and you see all these syncs that were just like happening. It's like my mom just chose that because it was like a cool, I don't know, we didn't think about it. I love how that stuff happens. Oh, and then the chameleon, yeah, chameleons and frogs, reptiles are a big part of my sync game. That's cool. Being seen got me thinking about being seen as a projector because I experience it too. It's also wild when I notice the shift that happens when I see others as a projector mid conversation. Oh, crazy. Yeah, it's a goddamn curse, us projectors that have this need to be seen, but have to dial in the when to engage to thus be seen. And then so much fucking trauma and bitterness of I think a lot of projectors experience some parts of their lives getting the feeling of like never really being understood by other people in a way that feels like it should be. Not like, you know, trauma wise or projecting like self narcissistic wise kind of, but the just never feeling like you fit in. And so then that has this like overwhelming urge to say the thing you're thinking when somebody's saying something and point out whatever. um so then they'll go, oh whoa, you're right, that was really deep, or like that's a good point, and then you feel like, okay, I have value, you recognize me. And it's crazy to figure out that that's the thing that makes it not ever feel right, or you step in. Yeah, I could go off on projectors for a while, but it's very difficult to get over that stuff and not have it muddle up in your other parts of your life that like are okay to be seen. It's a difficult labyrinth as a projector. In the dream, you also wanted to know if the frog represented someone for you. Whoa. Did I find out? Because man, frogs are in my whole Jungian thing that happened to me while I was reading the Red Book. That like one of my big mystical experiences happened at the end of that book. But in some of that part, I was doing journaling and had this hypnagogic state with this fucking frog. And he had a crown on, and it was like I drew him in my book somewhere, but and I don't remember. I think I wrote down the context, but there was something communicated in it. But and then reptiles have like always been in my, like I said earlier, they're just like in my dreams and my like snakes, I guess, mostly. But then there is a gecko. There's a weird gecko that I drew when I was like 3, and I found it, and it was like such a cool looking thing as an adult that I grabbed it and brought it home. And this is when I was like seeking symbolism and stuff, and I was like, I think this is a key for me that I drew when I was 4, and like had all these ideas about it. And then all of a sudden I was having dreams about like, I would say they were geckos, but they were like digital, like hodgepodge animals together, but it had this like fractal reptile thing to it. Yeah, anyways, boring you with my reptilian my not reptilian my lizard dreams. Oh, that's interesting. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, the OA soundtrack, both seasons is so good. That's how I discovered the band Young Jesus. I do remember the OA soundtrack being fantastic. Gattaca soundtrack. Ooh, yeah. Darjeeling Limited and I Heart Huckabees was really good too. Ooh, Requiem for a Dream. We got some fire in here. Dude, that movie blew my mind. That movie and Memento made me want to be a film student. Amelie. I love that. That's such a good one too. Sorry, I'm just moving through these chats. On competition, I think as soon as I felt okay with being authentic and valued as I am, I felt less as I am, I felt less threatened by others creatively. Even if we do the same stuff, mine will always be different than theirs, and there are people who will still resonate with me. Lately, I'm more inspired by others instead of threatened. It's a model of possibility instead of scarcity. That's how I feel. I go on TikTok sometimes and I'm just like so inspired by like the ideas that people come up with. And on all levels, sometimes it's like really, fancy art, well produced art that's really cool. But then there's the new form of like creative expression that has found itself just in like what social media is. So like meme culture or like the comments on certain videos become the like stage for comedy and deep metaphor and like correlation that happens. There's like this creative world of like authentic expression and observing of things that is like super inspiring to me. And then just like young kids being like creative with having a phone that has a sick ass camera, as you're 15 or 20 and you're starting to become an artist. There's like so many cool things happening. Um, and then the other part that I've said before, but I also there's like a audience for everything. There's sometimes I go on and I will get caught watching a live that I'm not really interested at all in what they're doing, but I'm observing it being like, this is crazy. There's 5,000 people in here. And, without going, it's you've seen those where they're I don't know what's happening, or like the person's really weird, or they're just it's bad music, or it's bad. And I'm not saying that it's like it's not that it's bad because like there's a bunch of people watching it, and maybe there's a lot of hate watching going on, which I think is like a thing that needs to be talked about too. Is like that's a weird phenomena because I definitely have done that where I'm like I'm intrigued by like the human nature in some senses where you're just like, whoa, what is this corner of reality that I never knew existed, and there are tons of people observing it, And for whatever reason we want to deduce if it's good or bad, it's still this like space where I'm kind of, if we ever get caught in thinking to ourselves like, where, you know, what if nobody likes me and there's like I get totally denied in the reality. Um, I just, when you look on social media, that like does not seem to be the case. There are thousands of people watching hamsters and hamster balls run around an apartment for 2 hours. And you can say that's like not creative or anything. It's like this niche thing, and it kind of is this like cultural moment where we're all getting views into people's lives that we like never knew existed, and that's fascinating in itself. But what it also is reflecting in many ways that the playing field is so leveled in some senses that there's an audience for like literally everything, and that's awesome. That's like super awesome. So I'm always inspired when I see TikTok like that. I'm like, damn, this is crazy that there's no point in anybody kind of getting caught in like hesitating to put something out because they're not going to be able to find anybody that likes what they're doing. It's crazy. Go on TikTok for fucking 15 minutes. You see what I'm talking about? Competition is tied to capitalism. We naturally collaborate and inspire one another. Yes. I think the biggest thing of competition too that I really like, that the Danny Goler rabbit hole that I was in for a bit, is the way he separates the two. And there's, because it's like we can all say like, yeah, competition bad and collaboration good. You know, that's like the love movement. This happened in the 60s, the hippie movement. And it's like, yeah, but there's still a bunch of like this cutthroat kind of competitive spirit, while everybody's like, but we love collaboration. We've been doing this forever. But when he describes it as a like, it kind of goes to the conversation I've been talking about earlier, where you're recognizing and being an artist, and you're recognizing like, oh, I'm performing for a certain person or a certain audience, and I need to reel that in. Um, that mechanism is a competitive mechanism. It's competition. So it's like externalizing and trying to compete for being the best, or compete to get liked. It's this like, that's what's motivating the engine of humans in this whole reality right now, because everything is kind of programmed this way. It functions, the reality we have right now functions off of the idea that everybody is going to like compete to get a part of the pie, and that keeps it going. So it's like it's very visceral and very deep. It's not just an idea. And when that motivation, when you see how prevalent that is in the reality, where it's motivating you like all the time, and it's not so overt like competition, but it's like this kind of non-abundant feeling, or a non-abundant frequency of moving in the reality, and like seeing it as like things happen for a reason, and what I need can happen in this moment if I get aligned right. You know what I'm saying? There's like this other kind of deeper aspect that's driving human experience. And when that is actually driven towards a curiosity and a passion to collaborate with the other, which there will be, if that's happening, there's like literally no judgment on who this other person is as a person, and who their authentic expression is. Their ideas about something is something that we like, that's where we will discuss. But that's a you know, and that all the different ways it'll express, like in a reality that is like driven by collaboration, there's a need for like neutrality, where there's no judgment, there's no competitive spirit, there's no, well, at the end of the day, like I'm going to kill you instead of me. There's none of that kind of thing. That's what opens up this whole other experience to be had. But you can see how it's like a trap door. If you start to see how much it is in the reality, it's like in your brain of thinking a lot of the times, and you kind of need it to pay the bills and be responsible. But if you can't get into like small moments of like really getting in that flow of reality where it's like super abundant, super responsive, that's where like the new reality is going to stem from. Is like when you can stay in that, then the reality is going to start to do that. The more people that do that, but it literally can't be competitive. You can't be driven by these programs that are like deeply within culture's way of like making the reality work. which again is like a needed thing for this time, right? And that's why as it's collapsing, reality's getting weird. There's like Mandela effects and all these other elements that are making it slowly have to modulate into this new space where collaboration is like the passion and the drive and the curiosity, and there's a like that's we're moving towards beauty for that, the reward is beauty and complexity. Um, and I just think I had to think about that a little bit where I realized like this is pushed around a lot as the idea of, the love and light crew and spirituality is like everything's one, just love. And yet there's like this whole other deep shadow hierarchy thing going on. And that, so these things get tossed around a lot. And I think for me, as you probe into them deeply, it's like, it's not an easy thing. The programs of this kind of competitive thing are fucking been going on for a long time. In Sanskrit, avatar means descent. Interesting. Yes, descent into the material. Oh, yes, the pains of a projector. I feel it, wanting to be seen and work too hard or give too much advice, but it's also beautiful to see things. Yeah, it becomes something when you start to get your own validation in life, like not through that mechanism with others. Then it becomes way easier. It was easier for me to then just like not say anything until I was asked, but that meant a lot of times just never getting asked. But then there kind of became this thing. It's like, oh, I'm kind of observing stuff that like I don't have to. I wouldn't like project. I'm not gonna say these things are necessarily true if I don't validate them through talking to them about it. But there would be certain things that I could observe that becomes this like beautiful experience of allowing it to be data and kind of um, allowing you to kind of stay in that observer position when you're interacting in certain situations that I found was like helpful for me. But it was crazy because when I was usually identifying if I'm seeing something or feeling something that I need to say it because then I need to get seen. You're not doing it for that anymore, it doesn't become this like achy feeling where like I have to say it, I have to get it out, and then you overstep. It's very easy to just like recognize it, and then you can step into a place of like beautiful awareness and just whatever. We all have different sensitivities, and when you can just kind of see it and not need to, get into a discourse about it or communicate it for any reason. It's yeah, it's nice that little zen zone. This is crazy later in the chat, but I think you thought the dream frog could have been your son, but the dream never confirmed it actually was not. Whoa, that's crazy. I got a frog son? Sick. That's funny. A frog too is what Danny Goler said that he is what kind of cracked him into his whole experience was when he was sober. He's the DMT guy, so he wasn't having DMT, and a frog being showed up in his room that he said was like as real as a person as like physical. And he had this whole interaction with it. But it's funny when he tells the story because he's like, "Yeah, it's a frog dude. Frog dude showed up." So frogs are maybe a part of the DMT dimension, and that could be the layer just outside of this reality. I don't know. Have I done 5-MeO DMT before? I don't think I have, but the first time I did it, I don't know, I got it from, like, a really trusted friend, and he sat with me, and I don't think I knew enough at the time. I just he said he had DMT, and he was like it's a good friend of mine, and he had had a crazy experience with DMT, and then he took years to integrate, and we connected on music and all these other things. And when I started getting into psychedelics, he was a source for me. And at some point, he was like, "Hey, I know you're like on this path of like exploring these modalities. He's like, if you ever get to DMT as an option, he was like, I can you just come to me and like I want to be there with you to do it." It was very nice and respectful, and I was like, okay, good to know. And I didn't end up doing it until like a year later because then it synchronistically I was like kind of pushed to do it, and so I went and did it with him. And I don't know if I really knew what it was. I just trusted him. Um, but I will say, so then I did it a couple other times, and not 5-MeO, and those definitely weren't 5-MeO. So the only reason I'm bringing up that first one is because that was the heavier of all of the experiences. Um, and I don't know if that was because I took much more than I did the other times. Obviously, that's a huge part of it potentially, but it was yeah, it was visual, but it wasn't. The things I've heard described with 5-MeO are not. I don't think I've had that. I had what I would say was some like that waiting room kind of experience, but and I don't know if it was before or after that. But there was this other like I don't know if it was like, to be honest, I don't think it was a like more source kind of experience, which I hear with 5-MeO, you go like blast off into this loving like source thing. You're kind of like very, very far out there, like completely out of your body. I definitely felt like I died, but I don't know if I went there, but I went to a space where there was like VR goggles, and I pulled my head back and it was just all blackness. But then I got pushed into a different room for a minute, and there was this whole other experience. So that had this love feeling, but I don't know if it was the 5-MeO. Long story for no, I don't think I have. Also called the Jaguar, I think, the synthetic version. Love the projector talk. Agreed. Also fun with universe, weird stuff, conspiracies, just to sit there and enjoy what's unfolding. Yeah, for sure. I do that a lot of times. Just sit back and popcorn. I sat with Bufo last August in Guatemala. I'm going back in October, may or may not sit with it again, but it was special. I love it. Actually, Jess's energy came through in my last dose. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I after all the Danny Goler talk, I've kind of sparked my interest back up in the DMT um pursuit. I think the last time I did it, I was like, I think I'm done with that one. It's kind of heavy, but I was also that was a while ago, and I think I've processed a lot since then, and also kind of changed my view like fundamentally on certain aspects of reality, that now it's actually more of a yeah, it's a curiosity again. And I think through this new framework that Danny Goler's obviously putting out, I'm like, whoa, like that I resonate with a lot of that, and I feel that to be true from my experiences with it. But now with my new understanding, I would like to kind of do that again. But um it's definitely a sketchy one. Like, there's, like, an aspect of it that is, it's it's a doozy. But I've never done ayahuasca, and I felt like that one was one that I was just kinda like, if I get pulled to do it, I'll do it, but I have not really felt an inkling towards that thus far, but you never know. First time ever I could join your live. It's 2 a.m. here in the Netherlands. Oh, amazing. You're in the Netherlands. That's sick. Well, thanks for being here at 2 a.m. That's badass. I love the Netherlands. I've been there a couple times. Dying is the same name of the game. Yep, surrender to the max. Yeah. The first time it was easier for me because I was like so surrendered in my life. I was just like, fuck this. Then the other times I did it, I could feel my tension and like not wanting to surrender, and stayed in that for a little bit too long, and it was just like, ooh, when you're in that, you like have to let go. But I was also doing it. I should have done it when I was doing it. I was kind of trying to escape my reality. The last 2 times. I've done it 3 times. All this shit's like so about what you bring up to it, man. That's why I love Danny talks a lot about the importance of that, the intention. I've always found that to be true with all my other experiences. I've also found that why that's true, but by not doing it with intention. Um, but the way he talks about it with DMT is very interesting because it's kind of he talks about it more of like a technical function. He's like, it you mess yourself up if you don't do that, and he explains why technically from a like simulation kind of perspective, and it makes so much sense. Like, oh fuck, it's not just like a cool idea to like have intention and have like something that you're actually kind of you ritualistically set up that has this like frequency to it, 'cause that's what dictates the entire function of it. Made so much sense. Yeah, maybe I went to the void. I'm not sure. It felt like that. I just remember it being trippy that it was VR goggles. I was like when I pulled out, it was like a fucking screen was my reality where I was like just sitting on the couch. But you know what? Another thing I'm just thinking of out loud because the Danny Goler stuff's on my mind. He describes part of it. He's done DMT like a unfathomable amount of times, and then he also has this science physics perspective, so he's kind of studying the stuff when he's in there. But um, so he's put together like a decent map, and it's just his take. So take what you will with it. But I do resonate with certain aspects the way he describes it via my own experience. And he says this thing where like you're only going to be able to like you with DMT specifically, you're going into a space that is so like it's a separate space of like what you know to be reality, and the mind has to adjust to a like ramp up of complexity so fast, and also it has to kind of start to try to figure out what this complexity is through the framework of what you already know to be true. So if you're somebody that's like literally knows nothing about spirituality and you do that, it's like it's probably the most harrowing experience because you have no way to like grab that complexity and make sense of it. Um, but when you feel like you're separate from your body, you do feel like you're dead. So you would just be like, oh, I'm dead if you had no clue. But if you start to understand certain parts of reality as you go in, the complexity can kind of quickly ground into your awareness because you have frameworks for understanding that will make that available to experience and become aware of and understand it. That's the most important part is to be able to understand. So you're not going to be overwhelmed. You're going to experience not getting overwhelmed with complexity if parts of that complexity was not going to even be able to be in your understanding. So but then there's an aspect to it where like if you're on the edges of understanding with like if you're into that space and the overwhelming complexity shows up on the edges, anything that's like kind of just outside of your ability to understand is going to show up in a very trickstery way, kind of neutral until you can place what it is, and then it'll start to manifest as that. So if something's starting to look a little like scary, and it starts to look like a figure you saw in a horror movie or something in your reality that you have as an image, you'll start to map that onto it, and then it will kind of become that. But it might not actually be that. It's part of the trickster neutrality kind of like more hyperdimensional plasma kind of thing that would be your like learning how to like interact with that kind of complexity and not turn it into your worst nightmare. So like I thought it was really interesting how he's explaining kind of these mechanisms where you're not like people get overwhelmed because it's so much complexity that they cognitively don't know what to do with, and that's what will create kind of psychosis and inability to ground back into your reality once you come back into your body. And it technically it makes a lot of sense, and through my own experience, the one that I had that it kind of was void, it did feel like there was something else. It was black space, but there was, like, something else here, and I don't know if it was, like, an entity or entities or a space that was something other than, like, void space, but it might have been, like, my inability to even kind of understand because I kinda started to go like that, and then I was like, "No, no, no, no." It was, like, enough for me, um, but the way he describes over time as he's done it and he's been able to, like, hold more complexity and, like, ground into that experience more, he now, like, stabilizes into it very quickly, and even on small amounts can kind of, like, be in that space and be also in his body, like, so he's, like, out on it but then, like, moving around in the room and is, like, interacting. For me, when I did that, I didn't even remember where my body was. You're talking about getting up, walking around. I did walk for a second, though, actually, now that I think about it, but I didn't know I was walking, which is scary. Um, so, yeah, I don't know, I like that description of the way he's kinda mapped that space. Again, makes me interested to, have an experience again at some point, not necessarily in a rush. I feel like because the whole self talks through visions that these could be VR communications from the whole self. I haven't done DMT though, so I'm speaking as an outsider. Oh, interesting. Yeah. You should if you're interested, listen to Danny talk about it because it's a whole it all fits in the simulation, like everything's a simulation model. Um, but yeah, his technical view on it is like really activating to me. Nice cooking and doing a few things while listening. All right. What are we cooking? Talking from the POV of ketamine therapy and how I understand immediately I'm talking to my God self. So whatever happens feels very surrendered and normal. Interesting. Yes, what I found most pleasurable was 100% absence of the left brain activity. You're full on right brain. It's very relieving as more right brain dominant being. Oh yeah, that's awesome. I I have a lot of right dominant. I feel happy to have that. Toward the end of the trip, as the medicine is wearing off, I actively remember the conscious awareness of judgment and criticism coming back online. Yeah, that's this guy Chase Hughes talks a lot about that with his experience where he just felt the difference of being in that kind of joyful, loving space, and it's very much like when you're in that joy, nobody's like critical and judgmental, right? And so when you oscillate back into it where it's kind of just a part of the framework of being in the body, it's like and you're not even choosing it as you come back in, you just feel it, like, infect your system, and that's what I'm talking about the, competitive programming, this capitalistic programming, that's what that all is the feeling of that, and again, not even blaming it, it's like that it's because of capitalism. Capitalism, like, had a function at a certain point, and then the competitive game only lasts so long, and then it becomes cutthroat like this, so then that's, like, literally why we have to stop competing and recognizing when I'm saying competing, all of the ways that shows up in your reality, because it's not just, like, sports competition or trying to it's, like it's everywhere, but, yeah, the feeling that you have when you come back from the DMT is, like, you feel how much of a hold that has on, like, this current game that's going on right now, um that's what I think is, like, one thing that's so helpful about psychedelics is, like, you can feel that. Most people feel that, right? Most people at psychedelics, there's, like, a euphoria experience and then a conundrum and difficulty with, like, trying to be back here and be okay with knowing that that's there. And just feeling the difference is such a huge part of being able to then recognize, like, "Okay, wait, this reality's falling apart with this competitive game. How do I get off these programs?" And that's a doozy, but I do think it's getting easier the more and more people are actually kind of doing it. It always seems like this thing that's been called ascension that's been happening for a while. It's like ramping up for individuals. So people that are starting to actually kind of go through something where they have a life crisis and they start to spiritually wake up, they're kind of like quickly moving through um, the field, and I think that that's going to become like what actually makes the infrastructure of this old system kind of finally putter out, petter out. Okay. Uh-oh. She's gonna go into the void on her beach trip. Vibes permit. Do you think it's the sense of the nervous system coming back online? I feel like the nervous system is where our stories and fears are stored. Yeah, that could be, you're right, that's probably what it is. Yeah, and until you do the, like, nervous system work or the emotional work, until you get it out of the nervous system, it's not, it's still kind of dormant. It really is. I think there was somebody, I forget one of Jess's, guests that she had on a while ago. We really liked him. His way, there's some article he had on, what's that Substack? I can't remember the words right now. But anyway, he talked about, like, the nervous system being this, the necessary, like, this fundamental part of what people were calling ascension and getting to 5D, that it was, like, all going to be through the mechanics of the nervous system, and how many people were jacked nervous systems, but being all kind of, like, spiritually external and claiming all these things, but then, not having the mechanism to even do the things they're talking about. The metaphysical part again of that for me was like, oh, it's an electrical thing. When the body's electrical and this world is electrical, your nervous system is what is like affecting your energy, whether that is your export of energy or like the way that you're experiencing the reality, is all a matter of like how much your nervous system is capable of balancing that energy or not, and all the different ways that can be traumatized and glitched and like, but it just makes so much sense electrically, like that is the kind of the biggest mechanism to a lot of this, why nervous system work is such a huge thing right now. All the different ways to approach that is also very interesting. There's definitely something with psychedelics that do, like, for the moment that you're on them, and maybe not all the time, but it's almost like it fires all of the nervous system on to its, like, a better capacity. Maybe it's not its full capacity, but you get into this space where, you feel like you're in a different awareness completely, almost, that has much more ease and flow and joy. But then, yeah, when you become back into your body, it's like almost like you think you did all the work and now you can stabilize this, and the next thing you wake up the next morning and you're like, no, this is still prickly. Uh, is like a good sign of that's probably what the experience will be like with a balanced nervous system, and a new reality is going to be like the psychedelic space, I reckon. Saw a monk. All right, what are we at? We at 2 hours. I'm gonna take a quick bathroom break, and then I don't know if you guys got any more questions or things or spice. You want me to spice some things? But I mean, I got probably I can keep going if you guys are here. 15, 20 more minutes. All right, pause. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back, obviously. I think doves are the swingers of the bird world. They always have little bird bath parties in the evenings. I love that. We have a bird bath here, and it was dry the other day, and I was gonna go out and fill it, and one of our cats was laying in it. It's like, "What? Now the birds are never gonna come here." Um, what else we got? Anything else going on in reality we should talk about? Did I miss any things up here? You know what's really interesting to me right now? It might just be what I'm, like, currently interested in, but the AI stuff, just the mixed emotions of which are out there in the world about, like, anti-AI or AI is fucking cool or it's gonna take us it's being programmed by us, and then, all the opinions. And as an artist, I was, in the beginning, I was like, "Okay, this is cool." Not a lot of people doing cool shit with it, and then as it got better, I was like, "Okay, people are doing some really cool shit with it." But then you get these, like, the opinions of it becoming you know, fucking Terminator and taking us all out or whatever. It's all interesting to think about, and I can see why that's like a fear. But just as strictly as a creative artist, if I was a kid and I like woke up in the reality, so if I was my most creative time, I think in my head is probably like where I was purely just like making shit to make shit, with no performative aspect. I was like 14, maybe 13, 15. And if I had the tools that I had now, it's like, holy shit, it would be a playground. Without all the other seriousness on it, as an artist, it's like it's really cool to see the way it's advancing so fast and making all of these other tools available. There's all kinds of other important questions around what is it being used as a tool to express a deeper imagination that's coming from like a human in our reality, or is this becoming like capitalistic kind of crutch that people can try to like leverage a bunch of money off of with faking things or taking things. And again, it's like to me, so I get it, I hear it all, and I've waffled on both sides. But then it does become this thing where I've always felt like, well, you can't turn it off. Obviously, the drum machine, when it first came out, there was this whole hubbub around the thing too, where it's like gonna make drummers irrelevant. And then look, it gave us this like whole new genre of music. And drummers never like lost. In fact, drummers got better, I think. So it happens again and again with technology. So like you can't put the fucking rabbit back in the bag. So is that a saying? But the thing is like you have to adapt to it in some sense. Now it moves so fast that it's like very hard to adapt to. But I've been trying to get into like update with the last time I played with AI was like maybe a year ago for the Projecting the Flail podcast. But now wanting to get into it to use as a tool, like for like ideas I have deep in my head that I know it can only happen with AI. And I've seen so many artists doing a really good job of like using it as a tool to amplify their own creative ideas in a way that's like really tasteful. And so, but you kind of have to like understand all the tools, and then it really does come down to at the end of the day like what your imagination can come up with. And so I've been trying to like learn them all. And then in my feed on TikTok and stuff is like all different opinions from both sides. And so it's really interesting to watch. But the thing with the Danny Goler podcast, or the Danny Goler like ethos of everything that he's talking about, he does bring up this point that I think is like so fascinating to me. And then I almost don't know what to do with it. Besides, like, I do feel like it's real. But it basically relies, there's nothing to I feel like I don't know what to do with it because it involves all of us doing something, you know? But this idea that he says the alignment problem with the AI, so what everybody's up hub about, essentially in all forms, whether it's an artist or it's like a tech thing or just like a general reality thing, is we can see the AI is going to it's advancing so fast that it's already can do more than humans can. Um, where this goes is gonna potentially become so advanced that how do we make sure it doesn't pull a fast one on us? And it's quite a conundrum if you dig into the AI world. That's really like a big part of it. But they're all trying to play whack-a-mole with like figuring out. I've said this before, kind of that the figuring out how to align it as it's coming out. And so if we can see that the reality is competitive and it's cutthroat capitalism kind of stuff, that's what's programming the reality. So it is coming from the people. And so the alignment problem, as Danny says, is not like an AI issue, it's a us issue. And so what if you see the whole reality as these like multi-layered simulations, we are kind of already in an AI kind of thing. It's this very, very, very advanced tech that seems real. Then there's a singularity happening where we're creating another one. And so then that means like we're the alignment problem. So the test is actually like, can we get into a certain state that secures that whatever tech we're developing as an extension and tool, not sacrificing ourselves into it, but using it as a tool, but whatever that is, that it has a collaborative mentality and is going to be raised from this point forward in a way that would like make it impossible that it would ever turn, because that's not the way that we program it, because we are all driven by collaboration and a new understanding of the interconnectedness of everything through experiencing it, not just like this is a great idea, because that's what we've all been talking about forever. But it's so it has to be this like you feel that experience and you know that there is no like competitive drive going on. And so when you then let this AI start to, advance in this quickness that it does, it will always have the best interest of the group in mind. And I would have to guess that that's what a lot of these other simulations above that are based on, is like this test that we're doing. If you don't meet that test, then like, okay, no big deal. But like you gotta reset or start over or whatever that is. And so this point is just being able to like, we're at that alignment singularity problem, not because it's like something we need to do with the text, we should do. It's fundamentally like it's a part. This is we're at that test point where like we're going to advance into a different kind of like awareness, a different kind of species, if you will, and the technology we've developed alongside is becoming kind of a mimic of what we're in, and so if it's not aligned properly, it just won't work. Uh, so it's just such an interesting you start to think about, again, this is more emphasis for the Cross the Sleeping Phoenix and this 5D and this, like, collaborative space, this love thing, this love channel, you know, it makes it, like, really wild to then watch what people are doing with AI right now, and that gives you a reflection of like where we're at in general. So the idea of AI slop and everything, it's just slop because there's a motivation to leverage people's attention to make money and to get power or whatever. So the slop is like people just taking extreme shortcuts with a tool that has the ability to kind of like get anything in your imagination out. It's like such an amazing tool, but people are kind of like, well, I'm just going to copy this and that and hijack, and they can make a lot of money. So it's like, but that's because we're motivated by that. Like, so what people are doing with it is a really good way to get a gauge on like where we're at as a culture. And that's what's cool. There's all these different bubbles of people doing shitty things with it, people stealing with it, people, taking people's identities with it, people faking news with it, propaganda. It's like a nightmare, right? But there's also people making amazing art with it, people making money off of themselves, becoming sovereign business owners, individuals by securing stuff with it. People using it to learn, and there's so many like amazing things with it too. So it's like I don't know what's dominating, but sometimes my algorithm is dominating with like really inspiring people using it for amazing things, and then sometimes it's just a bunch of people complaining about it, and I don't see the sense of complaining about it because it's like thing that Jessa talks about a lot of the time too. It's like if you see a bear, it's a bear. Like you can't try to make the bear go away. If you see it in the woods, you have to like label. There's a bear. There's a threat. There's action needing to be made because there is a bear. It's the same idea. It's like the AI is here. If we complain about it and try to like stop it, it just doesn't. I think people have the power to kind of like have their voice heard more in things like this, but the AI, it's you can't turn this one off. Power to the people, where we all can agree on something and not allow certain moves to be made that are a collective thing being made by some corporate interest or whatever. I agree. We can all have like effect in that, but then with this AI thing, I'm like, it's like trying to say, well, the internet's bad. The real problem that AI, is like this is because the internet, so we should stop having internet. It's like, okay, the entire reality is functioning off that, right? AI is already integrated too much. It's like you can't turn it off. So yeah, discernment is key, I guess, in these wild times. But I really like this idea of the alignment being us issue, and the AI will be fucking dope if we can get our shit together. Then I think it's going to be like such an incredible, time of exploration, advancement, and all of this. Ooh, I like a random question. Do you think the telepathy tapes could be a form of controlled disclosure? Interesting. Yeah, I've flip-flopped back and forth on this because I listened to it in the beginning and I really liked a lot of it. And then I forget where I got the information. And again, this is like I'm not taking all of this seriously when I'm getting the information. I'm just using it as data and then trying to gauge my actual feelings on it. So I listened to it the first time and really enjoyed it. It made me think about a lot of things. It validated some things in my own experience of life. Felt it to be very true. And I've always seen some of these things that are labeled as handicapped kind of elements in reality, or things that are like disabilities, are actually like a misunderstanding of culture, and that a lot of those are superpowers being, displayed, and we don't understand it. So we label it as something's wrong. So that's what I mean. It validated a lot of feelings like that. And then the way it became, like, elevated so fast, I did see as a, like, "Oh, this is a little bit slippery," as, like, there's a lot of truth, I think, being shared here, and, it just went, to so popular so fast on Joe Rogan show, and then just boom, boom, number 1 podcast over his for a while, that I was like, "There's just too much, like, truth coming through an open channel into everybody." Like, if they're gonna have to change so much in the infrastructure of our world based on these truths coming through that, like, I think are all positive, and there might even be, like, people already in infrastructure positions to be able that are already wanting to go this way with starting to understand human consciousness and communication in a whole fresh way. But it's something that I think that kind of information does sometimes have to be bridled out in a certain way. And so I'm only saying this because it got so big, and I kinda in the beginning was like, "Whoa, is this gonna change things, or is this gonna become something that can get hijacked?" And so then I started hearing other negative things about it, and some of that's just, like, people's opinions, and they trend and catch on, and so they can be fake. So you kinda have to, like, feel through it, but then there was some information that I got that made sense at some point that it had gotten a little bit hijacked. I just mean not hijacked, but the framing of what the real truth was had kinda gotten, like, mushed up with all these other ideas of it, and it's almost like the channel of truth that she was kinda bringing forth got noisy. And so then there's a lot of, like, other traps that can kind of pursue from it. So I just say that as a long story because that's, like, legitimately the way I went through my feeling on it. And so after going through all of that and then kinda coming back to home base of how I actually feel about it, um, I feel like there's a lot of truth in it, in it not being a disclosure that's gonna be one of these, like, collective, "Okay, we all agree on the same thing of what this is, and therefore, let's change the medical system, let's change the schooling system, let's change our idea of parenting." There's so many things that have to, like, kinda change. That's gonna all of those changes, I think, are gonna come when you can hear information like this and know it to be true for yourself, and then it becomes this, like, inner disclosure for people that can see what that is and go ahead and be like, "Okay, so, like, telepathy is very real," and not only that, but a lot of the ways that we are trying to understand people with autism, I can, like, now approach that way differently with this understanding and be that way, right? And do that in your life in whatever way makes sense. Even if it starts to be like, "Okay, telepathy is real, I wanna work on that myself," or whatever. I think the disclosure in many ways is this, like, phenomena that, is already happening, but it is, as a lot of people are starting to say now, it's like this inner disclosure. And that's different for everybody, and it can kinda come through different modalities. It can come through UFO stuff. It can come through conscious, exploration and neuroscience and stuff. It can come through, uh, conspiracy theories and spiritual awakenings, any of that. But the mass kind of thing where it's like one podcast comes out and then everything changes, I think is, like, too difficult to have happen in the reality right now with so many things shifting around and it kinda being predicated on our collective ability to take these things, these mini disclosures, and, like, not need them to be validated by seeing it externally in the infrastructure or anything. It's just going, "Okay, this is for me. I know this to be true now," and then reflecting that in your reality. Like, so being that way in whatever way shows up in your reality. You don't need to, like, go out and do it. At least this is what I'm finding to be most useful, for me is this, like, slow drip disclosure process. You could just say the disclosure is actually, like, the awakening, right? As most people say, the awakening is an individual process. The disclosure kind of is too. I just not until we get to a certain threshold of, like, moving into this old other complexity and enough infrastructure has kind of moved out of the way, will there be quick collective expression of these, like, things that we're saying are disclosure and, like, all these truths need to come out. Um, Seems to be the only way that it would actually work with such a, like, sketchy reality right now. It's, like, very the infrastructure just feels like it's on these, you know, when you like watch beach houses, like in North Carolina, Outer Banks, there's a huge hurricane. So there was houses that were like right up close to the beach, and they're all just on these stilts. And as the water comes in, it starts to go like this, but it hangs on for a while. And you know, the house is like really leaned and everything. It finally erodes, and it eventually crumbles. That's what it feels like our infrastructure is right now. It's just leaning. The house is like, and so there is a need for, I think, certain parts of the reality that like help this transition is to not just like knock the shit over and then have to you know, build into this new way of being. It's like this slow drip thing that enough individuals start popping out, but enough people still stay blind to it, and the infrastructure still has like people are going to work and doing things and keeping just enough so then it can kind of slowly go into the ocean of Cross the Sleeping Phoenix, you know? So yeah, long answer. That I guess ultimately is yes. It's a form of disclosure, I think. AI short films. I haven't seen too many AI short films. I mostly see stuff that's like just weird art that people do on TikTok and stuff with music and just like liminal shit, and some things that are like very realistic, but you almost can't tell are AI. And then a little bit on YouTube. I would say short films, but like short displays of art. I haven't gotten into the short films yet. Oh yeah, no problem, Bethany. I've been loving going live every Friday. I'm glad it's giving vibes. I just watched WT. Very interesting to see what they framed aliens and stuff. WT. I just watched WT. War. I don't know what WT is. WT. ET. Oh, ET. Huh. Yeah. Spielberg is like an interesting rabbit hole. The other day, I started. I've always had a really bad feeling with just like all Hollywood like shit that feels like propaganda that's like not the real truth. You know, as you get into conspiracies and stuff, you start to see all of that, and you immediately want to label it as like, oh, it's all the Matrix, it's all bad. They're just every movie is like kind of making us think the wrong way or something. And I think there's some truth in that. But obviously it's not like for everything. And so I've always had this conundrum with certain films that I'm like, they're telling you the truth here. You know, like The Matrix. And obviously The Matrix has some very important truths that I think are a little wrong, like the idea that it's a trap and a jail and you got to break out of it. But for the understanding of the time, great. Everything else is like fucking awesome, and there's so much truth in it. So like, how do they let these things out? There are good movies that seem to make it to box office and get so big, and for people that can discern the truth, it's right there, like a huge part of understanding more of this reality, whatever it may be. And so then with Spielberg being involved in some interesting ones, I would say it was always like he's got information, like he's got some inside person or something that's telling him what kind of movies to make, because he is ahead of the game every time. Like with Minority Report, that movie is like was so ahead of its time that the reality we're living in now, a reality like Minority Report is like a year away or something. It's like so close. And so in Minority Report, I remember I heard this, that like the touch screen thing that is part of the like, I remember at the time it was a very big technological leap. That movie had like this groundbreaking technology, which Spielberg always does. Another insight here, but he that was before the iPhone and everything. So then like Steve Jobs, I think, or the stuff was around there where it was like who came first, who knows, but it was like way ahead of its time. And then so all of his movies you start to see, when you look at them this way, you know, Closer Encounters, way ahead of its time. The disclosure thing he's doing right now, potentially like ahead of its time, with the idea of like the disclosure with aliens, maybe is in the future, whatever. So what is he doing? Is he for the dark or the light, or is this more nuanced? And is there some kind of thing, within elite status of filmmaking that you do get access to certain kind of information that is like dripped to you that is in some sense some way of like adding some propaganda in here or there and subtly nudging the subconscious of the reality in a certain direction. So good or bad, right? It's like sometimes it's maybe a little bit of both every time. And that's what I started seeing Spielberg as. I was like, it's a little bit of both, I think. And it might be because I was always a fan of him as a kid, but then I was never like a diehard fan. I was really a diehard like as an artist with like Michel Gondry and Spike Jonze, these other kind of more edgy artists. But Steven Spielberg's movies always got me. Like they always pull you in a certain way. He's a very good storyteller. But I would think that like when you become a really good storyteller like that, there's a part of the reality because our reality is based on storytelling. Consciousness, all of this is like story is a huge part of it. So if you have somebody that's a really good storyteller and can make visual films, the powers that be in the reality are going to kind of like circle around this person to um, be able to have influence. But I don't think at certain levels that it's all bad all the time. I think we project onto that pretty easily, and I have for a long time. But I heard this whole story about Spielberg, and it was through some other like esoteric podcast that I think got me a little more soft on what's up.
Have you heard about this Lindsay Clancy trial?
Have I heard about it?
I'm just kidding.
This bitch.
I just feel bad that everyone ate all the cheesesteak that I made.
Oh, it's fine. I'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, babe.
We get to the top.
Okay. I'm ranting about Spielberg. So the thing is, the story was interesting because there was something that this person shared, and I didn't check if it was true, but he sounded educated in film, and he said after Jaws is when he started to have a relationship with big business people that you could say are probably tied to a little bit more of um, a world that would have this awareness of being able to nudge and drip certain information to get the subconscious of the reality, seeing those movies and thinking a certain way. And it made a lot of sense. And there's something about Steven Spielberg that when I hear him talk and the very little interviews that he does do, there is an energy about him that I'm like, he's not nefarious, but he's not dumb. He's very smart and intellectual, and he's very like calculated. And there's like this pureness within there that I see that still feels relatively stable with being in such a crazy world of narcissism and power and control. And I don't doubt that like his company that is big and corporate has a lot of these elements within the business that happens around such an individual. So there are things that he's probably tied to with the big companies that have shitty track records, but him as an individual, I've always been like, he's confused. I like the vibe. Like it's like a dad vibe and it's like stable. So then I was like, yeah, there's probably a lot more neutrality in some of these like control parts of the reality. When you start thinking the simulacra terms and this holistic thing, there is an allowance to like a certain game to be played that we would experience as like this is a dark reality, but they're like, yeah, but at this level, this is like we all want this at some level. So all I'm saying is that I think at these higher levels, there's sometimes only so much ability for like this propagandized like brainwashing through theater and art to be allowed to just dominate. So there's always like a trickle of both. So the game's allowed to be played. So it's really again comes down to discernment. You can watch a piece of art that has been known to be some propaganda piece that's just like making us think in a negative way, but you probably, if you approach it in a different form, you could probably pick out really useful things that are nuggets of truth that are like helpful to understanding what's going on in reality. So I really like this framework for myself that I'm starting to try to like see everything that way, where there's like you can see the dark parts of a lot of things if you choose to see it, but you can also see this other side if you choose to see it. And that's difficult when the reality is all gummed up with like making you see shit that gets a lot of views. And so we have this cutthroat reality where you're being forced a lot of dark ideas of things. And this is the whole conspiracy world where I think some people get lost in that and being like, everything's a matrix, everything's propaganda. And it's such a powerless place when you continue to do that. Do I think there's truth there? Yeah, but it's not like the full truth. And so it's actually made me want to go see Disclosure Day, the new movie or whatever. It's called Disclosure Day? The Spielberg movie. Because I think when it first came out, I was like, "Oh god, this is like some propaganda. Like this is like too on the nose. Like there's no way there's gonna be anything real in here." And again, I think there is false narratives in there maybe, but there's probably the heart of it is probably a cool thing, and there might be some nuggets of truth in there that are valid, but amongst all the other kind of false things, they're not gonna like dominate the field. And I think that's even something Spielberg could be. I wouldn't wanna project it onto him without knowing him, but there could be even a little bit of an awareness that that's going on, that he's doing like, he knows he's doing that. He knows he's gonna get access to this, like, drip of information that's, like, a true part of reality that's going on. He's gonna get it ahead of time, and they're gonna say, "You have to say the storyline does this and this," which are, you know, frameworks that they put in that are part of it, being um, a false fact, and then he's allowed to put in whatever he feels is true, and so then he could have some connection where he's getting dripped information, and he can understand the esoteric part of it enough to, like, put truth in it. I would say that another person like this is what's his name? Christopher Nolan. Some of the movies he does too, the same thing happens where I'm like, "Yo, this is, like, so real and so true." And then there's a couple things that I was like, "Why did you make this decision? This feels like this is a false thing." So, I don't know if that's making sense, but that made me think all that because you said ET. Hi, Mark. I often watch and listen to The Truth live at the Village video where your drumming is incredible. Oh, that's awesome. Greetings from Mexico. God, I loved it in Mexico, dude. We were down there all the time. The Truth live at the Village. You know what's funny is that's like Jessa, my wife, it's her favorite video to watch of me because I met her after I was out of the band, so she never got to see me play, but she likes watching that one. So it's funny. That was actually a really fun thing to record live at the Village. We were like kind of at the like peak of that pink cloud in the beginning of the band, and we had put a lot of work in, so we were like topped out in our performance. We were like really on in those performances. I recently viewed a video of Richard Rudd where he mentioned that there's no free will. He often mentions, though not explicitly, that he was able to see the future in this sense. And if everything is predetermined, then nothing that we do, like manifestation, mantras, etc., are doing anything in the field. What are your thoughts? Ooh, interesting. I talked about this on the last live a little bit with this conundrum of free will. And it's a hard thing. Like, the conversation of free will because there's a part of me that is, like, so adamantly against the idea that we don't have free will because of this liminality that you're kinda describing here, where nothing that we do, like manifestation mantra or anything, is doing anything in the field, because everything's predetermined. So there's a state of, like, a lack of agency that I think for everybody is, like, a no-go zone with the way we wanna understand ourselves and how we're in the reality, because everything feels pointless and meaningless if we have no agency. Um, so I've always never understood the argument because I was so rooted in that, like, I can't let go of that. And I think because I have had experiences in psychedelics and certain states that are like, it is the liminality and not having purpose in life is so harrowing. And so there's a part of us that, like, does not wanna let go of that. And so I feel like over time, as I've started to understand myself more and the the way the like spiritual etherical kind of reality, the way I experience that. And even as I've described in the last time, flow state, when you're an artist and you're in this flow state, there is a sense of like not being in control, but really enjoying that process, because there's a synchronization with some other energy that feels like it is a part of you, in the way that like when you're working, it's working in your taste. And so it feels like it's almost a part of you. And that state of flow state, like if you've had the experience, um there is a certain like element of you getting out of the way and like not controlling things, kind of automating a little bit of yourself, and letting something else kind of take control and steer. That's where I think this free will thing is like the first kind of step of going, well, in this modality, when I get in flow and I can sustain that state, I'm very pleased with the work that I do, or I'm very pleased with my reality when it's flowing like that. Like things happen just how they should. I don't get, bent out of shape, via hitting a roadblock or something in if I'm making art, or if I in reality, like I can kind of just accept things. And there's a part of that that does feel like I'm not as rooted in what I perceived as my own free will as a agent of awareness. So free will, I do think, is the thing that we have. It's almost like you could say there's an illusion of it, or there's an illusion of like a bigger part of it. But what I do think we have, like, if it's of an illusion, it's a necessary one to be like, I'm thirsty and I can pick this up. I want to go out right now to go to the store. I want that, so you have like some malleability in it, like you do have agencies. But when we start to get into these like higher complex ways of seeing reality that involve higher selves or guides or God or other dimensions, I do think that there's a part that we have to, like, what they would say is like an ego death, or a getting control of the ego, or balancing that, does involve like what most people are calling free will, is they're associating that with the ego, with this like this self that they think is just this human vessel, this like avatar. And that, having to let go of that in a huge way, um is what I think is like Richard Rudd talks about, and like a lot of other deep spiritual thinkers like are keying into, like there's a certain level of this like where you don't have free will. But I think it's because we're in this like ego space that we can, that's what it seems like all the way up. But I think there is a level of individual agent expression at many levels up. Maybe at a certain point it starts to become this like cohesive kind of automated, instinctual kind of animalistic thing again, but at a higher complexity. But I think right now there is like, I don't see the value in it, and going so hard on that we have no free will, unless it's backed with like something that I'm talking about, where there's like this nuanced space. Because most people, when you try to say that to them, it's like, it's so harrowing to just be like, well, then what the fuck is the point? Like, I'm just gonna sit here. And so there's no action involved. And so I think that there's like, just in my own experience of flow state, and then having reality where I get in more in that observer position, I said this last time, I just don't feel like, I'm feeling like I'm allowing something else to guide my decisions. And I have a say in that because I'm instinctually going, oh, that, yeah, okay. But I'm like way out of the way, and I'm kind of observing the things come up and just instinctively going with a certain decision that just feels like I'm being guided in some way. But I think the mechanism was having to get out of the way. In flow state, that's what we're all doing. We're trying to, if you're an artist, you're getting into flow, like you get out of your own way. That's what's always talked about. And people have different ways of doing that, but sometimes it happens on accident through a playful attitude. So yeah, I those are my thoughts. And I would say, like, literally 2 months ago, I was not even thinking about this idea this nuancedly. I was still kind of like, "We have free will. What the fuck is anybody talking about?" Because it just seems so apparent even when you're asking the question. But having a certain part of free will, yes, and then this other element that is spiritual and all this other stuff does require you letting go of a little bit of that free will and finding out that it's actually like you get way more satisfied and you get way more in harmony with like where you're supposed to be going anyways. So it's a good thing to let go of. Yeah. I didn't realize Amanita Muscaria was suddenly being sold at cannabis places. I'm only familiar with Paul Stamets' lore around it. Guess it's legal versus yeah, I've never even gone into that stuff because the Amanita Muscaria, when I was really into looking into mushroom biology and all this stuff, not super deep, but Amanita was always the one that was like, it's a very harsh one and it is psychoactive, but it's only useful under certain conditions and all this stuff. And then I think the way it got like publicized so much is it's kind of under these medicinal uses. And I don't think the psychoactive compound is really even intact in the way that it's been known as. Because it wouldn't be on stores, at cannabis stores. I could be wrong. Maybe there's a part of it, but and they've gotten rid of the poisonous part of it. But yeah, I don't know much about that. Cinema, movies, film are all very Neptune and Pisces. When you pan out, it's wild to think of it relationship to all time, sitting in a dark room watching projections. Yeah, it's fucking wild. So meta. What's up, Norsh Portal? Norsh Portal. This is awesome. I didn't know we were streaming now. Yep, we here. Roman made me feel like Santa Claus. My cheeks got rosy. I felt cozy, and everything looked like an old movie with a little bit of Vaseline on the lens. I felt warm sitting by a fire. Okay, so I guess it is psychoactive. I mean, I know it's psychoactive, but rounding it back to the DMT thing and movies, I've been rewatching all the Avatars. Iowa, The Great Mother, so many connections to reality there. Yeah, I want to rewatch Avatars too. Because I think I watched one of them when I was like kind of into these things, and I remember feeling like, oh, this feels real on some levels. Part of Richard Rudd thinking there's no free will, I'm sure, is him being a student of human design, where the idea is that your form is set and it will always think, act in its own specific way. Matrix reference incoming. The point is to understand why you made the decision. Yep. Oh, that's great. Yeah, and I like that view that Richard Rudd's making. Yeah, I think it's and just even just being transparent with my own process is like there are certain people I've heard make strong, like very adamant arguments that we don't have free will, and they leave you hanging with this like, well, then what do I do? And they don't have this like grounded explanation that it kind of exists in nuance and paradox to be able to make it a useful thing to put into your framework of reality. But Richard Rudd's not one of those people. Danny Goler also explains it like this, and I've heard some other people, but yeah, so it's like a slippery slope with certain people that don't have the understanding. They're just going to be like, well, it's meaningless. I'm just going to sit at home and do nothing. All right. Well, I think I'm about tapped out, y'all. Thanks for hanging out. This was awesome to have a bunch of y'all in here. Gonna do it next Friday. Sticking to it. Good luck in the liminality. Will we be into the eclipse by next Friday? I'm trying to pull the calendar on my computer. This is 28th, right? Oh, it will be next Friday exactly. So we will do a live and fucking celebrate. And I mean, maybe I don't know if we'll celebrate, but the energy will be energying. Awesome. Thanks for being here. Love it from Australia. Australia. Cool. Thanks, guys. Good luck out there. Love you. Be real. See you next week.